Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. My name is Special Agent Daniel Mason, and every time I think about writing this down, my hands freeze over the keyboard. But I think I need to write it now. Maybe this way some of the questions in my mind will quiet down. Maybe not. The archive room in the basement of the San Francisco Federal Building gets colder than the city's famous fog at night. It was November 2019. And I'd been with the FBI for 12 years. Routine work, mostly financial crimes, occasional identity theft cases. Nothing that kept me up at night. Nothing that made me question the basic structure of how things work. Until I received the memo about file number 447 SF. The memo came through internal mail, which was already unusual. Most requests came through email or the digital filing system. But there it was on my desk one Tuesday morning, a manila envelope with my name typed on a label. Inside was a single sheet of paper requesting that I review and assess file number 447 SF for possible reopening. The request was signed by someone in the Administrative Review Department, a division I'd honestly never heard of in all my years with the Bureau. The signature was illegible, just a scrawl of ink. I almost threw it away. I had 3 active cases and a budget report due by Friday. But something about the request nagged at me. It specifically mentioned that the file had been closed due to administrative error in 1987, and that recent digital archiving efforts had flagged it for review. 32 years closed because of paperwork. I called the number listed on the memo. It rang 4 times and went to a generic voicemail. No name, just leave a message after the tone. I hung up. The San Francisco field office occupies floors 3 through 7 of the federal building on Golden Gate Avenue. The archive is in the basement, 2 floors below street level. I'd been down there maybe 3 times in 12 years, always to pull old case files for reference. It's the kind of place people avoid. Fluorescent lights that hum too loudly. Air that smells like old paper and concrete. Rows and rows of filing cabinets and boxes stretching back into shadows. I went down on Wednesday afternoon, taking the elevator to B2. The doors opened onto a long hallway painted institutional beige. At the end was a heavy door with a keypad lock. My credentials worked, which meant I had clearance. The door opened with a pneumatic hiss. The archive supervisor was an older man named Gerald Kirkland. He'd been with the Bureau for 38 years, the last 20 in the basement. He looked up from his desk when I entered, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "Agent Mason," he said, not quite a question. "I'm looking for file 447 SF. Something flickered across his face. Not quite surprise, not quite recognition. Something in between. 447, he repeated. He stood slowly and moved to his computer, typing with 2 fingers. That's a closed administrative file from 1987. I know. I received a request to review it. From whom? Administrative Review Department. Gerald's fingers stopped moving. He looked at me over his glasses. We don't have an administrative review department. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere in the archives, a ventilation system clicked on. The memo came through internal mail, I said, pulling it from my jacket pocket. I handed it to him. He studied it for a long moment, his lips pressed into a thin line. This letterhead is old. We haven't used this format since the 90s. He set the memo down. But if you want to see the file, I can pull it. Might take a few minutes. It'll be in the deep storage section. Deep storage? Pre-digital archives. Files from before we started scanning everything. They're organized by year and case number, but we don't access them often. He pulled a ring of keys from his desk drawer. Follow me. We walked through the main archive room, past rows of filing cabinets, into a section where the ceiling got lower and the air got colder. The fluorescent lights were spaced farther apart here, creating pools of shadow between them. Our footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. "Do you remember this case?" I asked. "No," Gerald said, but he said it too quickly. We reached a section marked 1987 to 1989. Gerald ran his finger along a row of boxes on a metal shelf, muttering numbers under his breath. He pulled down a cardboard file box, the kind with a lid that fits over the top. The box was labeled in faded ink, 444 Borough SF through 450 on SF. He set it on a nearby table and removed the lid. Inside were 10 manila folders, each about an inch thick. He pulled out the one marked 47 SF and handed it to me. The folder was heavier than I expected. The tab had been marked with a red stamp. Closed. Administrative error. 05/23/1987. "Can I take this upstairs?" I asked. "You'll need to sign it out, and it stays in the building." "Of course." We walked back to his desk. Gerald filled out a form by hand in a logbook that looked like it predated computers. I signed my name, dated it November 13th, 2019, and took the file. "Agent Mason," Gerald said as I reached the door. I turned. He was standing behind his desk, his hands flat on the surface, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "When you're done with that file, bring it back personally. Don't send it through internal mail." "Why not?" He didn't answer, just held my gaze until I nodded. I took the file back to my office on the 5th floor. It was late afternoon, and most people had already gone home. The November sun was setting behind the fog, casting everything in gray light. I sat at my desk, turned on my lamp, and opened file number 447 SF. The first page was a cover sheet with basic information. Case number 447 SF opened, 03/12/1987, closed, 05/23/1987. Assigned agents, Special Agent Robert Hayes, primary, Special Agent Michael Brennan, secondary. Case type: suspicious activity, welfare check. Status: closed, administrative error. I flipped to the next page. It was a field report dated March 12, 1987, typed on a typewriter with uneven keys. Field report: initial response. At approximately 14:30 hours on March 12, 1987, this office received a telephone call from a Mr. Leonard Sutter, age 67, residing at 2847 Lombard Street, San Francisco, CA. Mr. Sutter reported that his neighbor in the adjacent apartment, 2849 Lombard Street, Apartment B, had not been seen for approximately 2 weeks. Mr. Sutter stated he could hear unusual sounds coming from the apartment at irregular intervals. At approximately 16 hours, Special Agent Hayes and Special Agent Brennan responded to the location. Mr. Sutter met agents in the lobby and reiterated his concerns. He stated that the occupant of Apartment B, a Mr. Thomas Vickers, age 34, worked irregular hours but was usually seen coming and going regularly. The unusual sounds were described as thumping and dragging sounds, occurring primarily late at night. Agents proceeded to Apartment B and knocked on the door. No response. Agents identified themselves as federal agents and knocked again. No response. Agents could hear no sounds from within the apartment. Building superintendent was contacted and provided key access. At approximately 16:45 hours, agents entered Apartment B. The next paragraph had been redacted. 3 lines of text were covered with heavy black marker, the kind that bleeds through the paper. You could see the ghost of words underneath, but couldn't make them out. I flipped through the next few pages. More field reports, more interviews with Leonard Sutter, more details about Thomas Vickers. Age 34. Worked as a systems analyst for a now-defunct tech company. No family in the area, few friends, kept to himself. But every few pages there were more redactions. Sometimes just a sentence, sometimes whole paragraphs. And the strange thing was, the redactions didn't look official. They weren't the clean, uniform blocks you see in declassified documents. These were messy, done by hand with a marker, like someone had gone through the file after the fact and blacked things out in a hurry. I kept reading. On March 18th, 1987, agents returned to the apartment with a forensics team. More redactions. But I could make out enough to understand that something was found. Evidence of something. The reports referenced items of interest and materials requiring analysis. On April 2, 1987, there was a memo from Special Agent Hayes to the SAC, Special Agent in Charge, of the San Francisco office. Most of it was redacted, but the last line was visible. Recommend immediate escalation to specialized unit. This is beyond standard field investigation parameters. The next document in the file was dated April 15, 1987. It was a single-typed line on official bureau letterhead. Case number 4447 SF transferred to classified oversight. Field agents Hayes and Brennan removed from investigation. All materials to be secured in permanent archive. And then, dated May 23, 1987, the closure notice. Case number 447 SF closed due to administrative error. No further action required. That was it. The file ended there. 72 days from opening to closure, and the explanation was administrative error. I sat back in my chair. Outside my window, the fog had fully rolled in. The city lights were blurred halos in the mist. My desk lamp created a small circle of light in the darkening office. Something was wrong with the file. Not just the redactions or the vague closure reason. It was the dates themselves. I pulled out a notepad and wrote them down. March 12th. Case opened March 18th. March 18. Forensics team deployed April 2nd. Hayes recommends escalation. April 15th. Case transferred to classified oversight. May 23rd. Case closed for administrative error. 38 days between the escalation and the closure. What happened in those 38 days? I flipped back through the file, looking for anything I'd missed. That's when I noticed something odd about the page numbers. The field reports were numbered in the bottom right corner, standard procedure. But the sequence was wrong. Pages 1-4, initial report and first follow-up. Pages 5-7, interview with Leonard Sutter. Pages 8-12, second apartment entry and forensics request. Pages 18-23, memo from Hayes and transfer notice. Pages 13-17 were missing. 5 pages, covering the period between April 2nd and April 15th. The exact window where Hayes recommended escalation and the case was transferred away. I checked the rest of the file. More gaps. Pages 28-29 missing. Pages 34-36 missing. In total, 11 pages were gone. Not redacted, not marked as classified. Just missing, with the page numbers skipping over them as if they'd never existed. I picked up my phone and called Gerald Kirkland's extension in the archive. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail. I hung up, grabbed the file, and took the elevator down to B2. The archive door was locked. I swiped my credentials. Access denied. I tried again. Access denied. That didn't make sense. My credentials had worked earlier that afternoon. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked harder. Still nothing. I pulled out my phone and called building security. A bored voice answered. "This is Special Agent Mason, 5th floor. I need access to the basement archive. My credentials aren't working." "Hold on," I heard typing. "Yeah, the archive is locked down after 5 p.m. Access is restricted to archive personnel only." "Since when?" "Since always, as far as I know. I was down there at 3 o'clock today. Then the system must have been having issues." More typing. "Do you need something urgent?" I looked down at the file in my hands. The red stamp staring back at me. Closed. Administrative error. "No," I said. "I'll come back tomorrow." I went back upstairs. The 5th floor was empty now, the office lit only by emergency exit signs and the ambient glow from the city outside. I sat at my desk and opened the file again, reading through it one more time. That's when I noticed the photographs. 4 Polaroid photos, printed instantly, were glued to the inside of the back cover of the file. The colors had faded to the characteristic yellow-brown tones of old instant film. The photos showed the inside of a circle. Bare walls. Minimal furniture. A small kitchen visible through the doorway. But it was the 4th photo that stopped me. There was a wall in the photo. Just a wall, painted a dirty white. A wall with nothing remarkable about it, except for one thing. In the middle of the wall, at chest height, someone had written something. The photo was so faded that I had to place it under my desk lamp to read the words. It was written sentence by sentence, in small, careful handwriting with a pen. I can hear them in the walls. They know I can hear them. They're waiting for me to tell someone. Don't tell anyone. I stared at that photograph for a long time. The handwriting was steady, not frantic, almost mechanical in its precision, like someone had taken great care to write each letter clearly. The apartment in the photograph was supposed to be Thomas Vickers' apartment, the one he lived in at 2849 Lombard Street, Apartment B, the one that Agents Hayes and Brennan had entered on March 12, 1987. I pulled out my phone and searched for the address. It came up immediately on Google Maps, a 3-story building in the Marina District, built in the 1970s. I switched to Street View. The building was painted blue, well-maintained, with small balconies on each apartment. On impulse, I searched for Thomas Vickers. Nothing relevant came up. No obituary, no social media, no news articles. Not unusual for someone from 1987, before the internet became ubiquitous. But still, you'd expect something. I searched for Special Agent Robert Hayes, FBI San Francisco. Nothing. Then, Special Agent Michael Brennan, FBI San Francisco. Also nothing. That was unusual. Even retired agents usually had some digital footprint. LinkedIn profiles, mentions in old news articles, something. I logged into the Bureau's internal personnel database and searched for both names. The system took longer than usual to load, the little spinning wheel turning on my screen. When the results finally appeared, they were strange. Robert Hayes. No records found. Michael Brennan. No records found. I tried broader searches. Just Hayes in the San Francisco field office. Dozens of results, but none named Robert. Same with Brennan. I sat back in my chair. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows like something trying to get in. 2 agents investigated a case in 1987. The case was closed due to administrative error. 32 years later, there's no record that those agents ever existed, and 11 pages are missing from the file. I should have put the file back in the archive and forgotten about it. I should have gone home to my apartment in the Sunset District, made dinner, watched something mindless on TV, I should have treated it like the bureaucratic anomaly it appeared to be, but I didn't. Instead, I put the file in my desk drawer, locked it, and decided I'd go to Lombard Street tomorrow, just to look at the building, just to see if anything felt off. That was my first mistake. I left the office around 8 p.m. The building was nearly empty by then, just a few cleaning staff pushing carts down the hallways. I took the elevator down to the lobby and signed out at the security desk. The guard on duty, a younger guy I didn't recognize, barely looked at me as I passed. I walked out into the San Francisco night. The fog had settled in completely now, reducing visibility to maybe 50 feet. The streetlights created halos of yellow light in the mist. I could hear traffic on nearby streets, but couldn't see the cars, just headlights appearing and disappearing in the fog like ghosts. My car was in the parking garage 2 blocks away. I walked quickly, my hands in my pockets, the damp air seeping through my jacket. The streets weren't empty. This was San Francisco, after all, but they felt isolated in the fog. People passed me as silhouettes, appearing suddenly and vanishing just as quickly. I reached the parking garage and took the stairs up to level 3 where I'd parked. The stairwell smelled like urine and exhaust. Fluorescent lights flickered on the landings. My footsteps echoed in the concrete space. When I reached my car, I noticed something on the windshield, a piece of paper tucked under the wiper blade. I pulled it out. It was a photocopy of something, the quality poor, like it had been copied multiple times. The image showed a typed document, the text barely legible. I held it up to the garage's lights and squinted. It was part of a bureau memo. The letterhead was visible at the top, though degraded by multiple generations of copying. The date was April 9th, 1987. Most of the text was too faded to read, but I could make out fragments. Agents reported unusual behavioral changes. Recommend immediate psychiatric evaluation. Subjects claiming to hear. Investigation must be contained. At the bottom, in slightly darker text, was a single line. All personnel associated with case num 447SF to undergo standard debriefing protocol. There was no signature, no indication of who wrote it or who it was sent to. I looked around the parking garage. Empty. Silent, except for the distant hum of traffic from the street below. Security cameras mounted in the corners, their red lights blinking. Someone had been following me. Someone knew I had the file. Someone wanted me to see this memo. I got in my car, locked the doors, and sat there for a moment, holding the photocopy. My hands were shaking slightly. I told myself it was just the cold, the damp San Francisco air. But I knew better. I drove home taking a route I didn't usually take, checking my rearview mirror constantly. The fog made it impossible to tell if anyone was following me. Every pair of headlights could have been a tail. My apartment was on Irving Street, a one-bedroom place I'd been renting for 6 years. I parked on the street, hurried to my door, and locked it behind me. I turned on every light in the apartment and closed all the blinds. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table with the photocopy. Under better light, I could see more details. The memo had been addressed to S.A.C. Peterson, presumably the special agent in charge of the San Francisco office in 1987. The fragments of text suggested that Hayes and Brennan had experienced some kind of psychological distress during the investigation. Agents reported unusual behavioral changes. What kind of behavioral changes? Recommend immediate psychiatric evaluation. Standard procedure after a traumatic incident. But what made this case traumatic? Subjects claiming to hear what? And who were the subjects? The agents? Or someone else? I looked at the photocopy again. In the bottom left corner, almost invisible, was a handwritten note in the margin. The ink had mostly faded, but I could just make out 3 words. Check apartment again. I set the photocopy down and stared at it for a long time. Someone wanted me to go back to that apartment. Someone was guiding me, leaving breadcrumbs. But why? And who? The logical part of my brain, the part trained by 12 years with the Bureau, said this was a setup. Someone was playing games using an old closed case to mess with me. Maybe a disgruntled former employee, maybe a prank by a colleague. But the other part of my brain, the part that had learned to trust instinct, knew something else was happening. Something that started in 1987 and never really ended. Something that closed a case due to administrative error and erased 2 agents from Bureau records. I made a decision. Tomorrow, I would go to Lombard Street. I would look at the apartment building. And if I could, I would get inside apartment B. I finished my coffee and went to bed, but I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about that wall in the Polaroid photograph. The careful handwriting. I can hear them in the walls. They know I can hear them. Who was them, and what were they waiting for? Thursday morning came gray and damp. The fog had lifted slightly, but the sky remained overcast, the kind of November day where it feels like the sun never quite rises. I called in sick to the office, the first time I'd done that in 3 years. My supervisor, SSA Grant, didn't question it. I could hear the fatigue in his own voice. Everyone was overworked. I drove to the Marina District around 10 a.m. when I figured most people would be at work. Lombard Street was one of those classic San Francisco streets, lined with pastel-colored buildings, small trees struggling in the urban environment, cars parked bumper to bumper. The address, 2847 to 2849, was a 3-story building painted pale blue, just as it had appeared in the street view images. I parked across the street and sat in my car for a few minutes, watching. The building had 6 units, 2 on each floor. Small balconies jutted from the front, most of them holding bikes or potted plants. It looked like any other apartment building in the city. Normal. Inhabited. Nothing sinister. Apartment B was on the first floor, the unit on the left. The windows had curtains drawn, and I couldn't see inside. A bicycle was chained to the balcony railing. I got out of the car and crossed the street. The building had a small lobby with mailboxes and an intercom system. I scanned the names next to the buzzers. 1A, Rodriguez. 1B, K, Sullivan. 2A, Patel. 2B, C, Morrison. 3A, U. 3B, E. Lawson, K. Sullivan. Apartment B. Someone was living there now, 32 years after Thomas Vickers had disappeared, or died, or whatever had happened to him. I pressed the buzzer for 1B. No answer. I waited 30 seconds and tried again. Still nothing. I was about to leave when the lobby door opened and an older woman came out, carrying 2 bags of groceries. She was probably in her 70s, wearing a rain jacket despite the lack of rain, her white hair pulled back in a bun. "Can I help you?" she asked, not unfriendly, but cautious. You learn to be cautious in cities. I pulled out my credentials. Special Agent Mason, FBI. I'm looking for the resident of apartment 1B. Her eyes widened slightly. "Katie, she's at work. She works at one of those coffee shops on Chestnut. Is everything okay?" "Routine inquiry, nothing to worry about." "How long has Ms. Sullivan lived here?" "Oh, about 2 years, I think. Quiet girl. Keeps to herself mostly." "And you are?" "Irene Rodriguez. I've been in 1A for 30 years. She shifted the grocery bags. "What's this about?" "I'm following up on an old case. From 1987. Do you remember anything unusual happening in this building that year?" Her expression changed. Not fear, exactly. More like recognition. Like she'd been waiting 32 years for someone to ask that question. "You should come inside," she said. She led me into the lobby and then into her apartment. It was tidy, filled with the kind of furniture that comes from decades of living in one place. Photographs on the walls, mostly of children and grandchildren. A small TV played silently in the corner, some morning news show. She set down her groceries and gestured for me to sit on the couch. I did. She sat in an armchair across from me, her hands folded in her lap. "I've been waiting for someone to ask about apartment B," she said. "For years, I thought someone would come. Federal agents, police, someone. But nobody ever did. What happened?" She took a breath. "I moved into this building in January 1987. Young, newly divorced, needed a fresh start. Apartment B was vacant then. It stayed vacant for about 2 months. Then in March, a man moved in, quiet guy. I only saw him a few times. Dark hair, thin, kept weird hours. Thomas Vickers? I never knew his name. But yes, probably." She paused. "Things were normal for about a week. Then I started hearing sounds." "What kind of sounds?" "Thumping, like furniture being moved, but at 3, 4 in the morning, and other sounds." She hesitated. "This is going to sound strange. Go ahead." "Voices. Multiple voices, but muffled, like they were coming from far away. Talking, sometimes arguing. But when I'd see the man from apartment B in the hallway, he'd always be alone. I asked him once if he had roommates. He looked at me like I'd said something terrible and just walked away." "Did you call the police?" "I called the building manager. He went over there, knocked on the door. The man answered, said everything was fine. The manager looked inside and said it seemed normal, but the sounds continued." "What about Leonard Sutter?" She blinked. "How do you know about Leonard?" "His name is in the file. Leonard lived in 1A before me. He was the one who called the FBI. He was worried, more than worried. He told me, right before he moved out, that something was very wrong with that apartment. That the man in there was in danger, or was dangerous, he couldn't tell which." "When did Leonard move out?" "Right after the FBI came. March, maybe April of '87. He just left one day, didn't even pack properly. The manager found half his stuff still in the apartment." The room felt colder. I could hear the TV in the corner. Some commercial about laundry detergent. The volume too low to make out words. "What happened after the FBI came?" I asked. "That's the strange part. The agents came several times, 2 men, both in suits. They'd go into apartment B and stay for hours. I'd hear them talking through the wall, but I could never make out what they were saying. And the sounds from the apartment got worse." "Worse how?" "Louder, more frequent. And there was this smell." She wrinkled her nose at the memory. "Like something rotting, it would come and go. The manager said it was probably a dead rat in the walls, but it didn't smell like a dead animal. It smelled..." She searched for words. "Chemical, wrong." "Did you see the man from apartment B again?" "No. After the FBI started coming, I never saw him again. The last time I saw the agents was in May. They came with other people, more official looking. They were in there for maybe 10 minutes, came out carrying boxes, and that was it. The apartment was empty after that." "Empty?" "Vacant. For 2 years. Nobody would rent it. Then in 1989, a young couple moved in. They lasted 6 months. What happened? They said they heard things. The same sounds I'd heard. Voices in the walls. They broke their lease and left." My phone vibrated in my pocket. I ignored it. "Has everyone who's lived there heard things?" I asked. "Most of them. There've been maybe 15 tenants in that apartment over the years. Most don't stay long. Katie's been there longer than anyone since Vickers. But I've heard her talking to the manager about the sounds, too." "What does she say?" "That sometimes she hears voices." But when she tries to record them on her phone, there's nothing. Just silence. We sat in silence for a moment. The TV continued its silent murmuring in the corner. "Mrs. Rodriguez," I said carefully, "do you believe the apartment is haunted?" She looked at me with clear, sharp eyes. "I believe something happened in that apartment in 1987 that nobody wants to talk about. I believe those FBI agents found something, or learned something that made them close the case and never come back. And I believe whatever it is, it's still there." My phone vibrated again. This time I pulled it out. 2 missed calls from Gerald Kirkland. As I looked at the screen, it started ringing again. I answered. "Agent Mason." Gerald's voice was tight. "Where are you?" "Following up on something. What's wrong?" "You need to return that file, now." "I'll bring it back tomorrow." "No, now?" "Someone was asking about it. Someone from upstairs." "What do you mean upstairs?" "I don't know. A man came down here an hour ago, no name, just credentials I've never seen before. He wanted to know who checked out file 447. I had to show him the log." My chest tightened. "What did he look like?" "I don't know. 50s maybe. Gray hair, but his eyes—" Gerald paused. His eyes looked wrong, like he hadn't slept in days. He said you need to return the file immediately and that the case is sealed. It's marked closed, not sealed. He said sealed. He said there's been a mistake, that you should never have been given access, and that the file needs to be returned and reclassified immediately. Through Mrs. Rodriguez's window, I could see apartment B across the courtyard. The curtains were still drawn. "Gerald, do you know what happened to the agents who worked this case? Hayes and Brennan?" "No, and I don't want to know. Just bring back the file, Agent Mason. Please." He hung up. I looked at Mrs. Rodriguez. "Does anyone have a key to apartment B?" "The building manager. Why?" "I need to get inside." She shook her head. "I don't think that's a good idea. I need to see it." She studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "The manager lives in 3A. His name is David Lawson, but he won't let you in without a warrant." "Then I'll get a warrant." But even as I said it, I knew I wouldn't. There was no probable cause, no active investigation. File number 447 SF was closed. Sealed, according to the mysterious man with the wrong-looking eyes. Mrs. Rodriguez must have seen something in my face because she said, "There's another way." "What way?" "Katie leaves her balcony door unlocked sometimes. I've told her it's not safe, but she says she likes the fresh air at night. If you could get onto her balcony, that would be illegal." So would whatever happened in 1987 that made 2 FBI agents disappear from the records. She had a point. I thanked her and left her apartment. Instead of going back to my car, I walked around the building to the small courtyard and back. It was enclosed by a low fence, easily climbable. The courtyard had a few scraggly trees and some concrete benches covered in old bird droppings. Apartment B's balcony faced the courtyard. The sliding glass door was indeed cracked open, maybe 2 inches. An invitation or a trap, I couldn't tell which. I checked my surroundings. The courtyard was empty. Windows overlooked it from all sides, but most had blinds drawn. It was the middle of a workday, most people were gone. I climbed the fence and crossed the courtyard. The balcony was low enough that I could pull myself up and over the railing. I did, trying not to make noise. The bike chained to the railing rattled slightly. I stood on the balcony for a moment, listening. No sounds from inside the apartment. I could hear traffic from Lombard Street, a dog barking somewhere nearby, the hum of the city. I slid the glass door open wider and stepped inside. The apartment was dim, lit only by the gray daylight filtering through the curtains. It was small, maybe 600 square feet. A main room serving as living room and bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom visible through a half-open door. The furniture was minimal and cheap. A futon that doubled as a bed, a small table with 2 chairs, shelves made from boards and cinder blocks. It looked like any young person's apartment in an expensive city. Normal. Lived in. There were dishes in the sink, clothes draped over a chair, books stacked on the floor. But the air felt wrong. Not cold, exactly. Not warm either. Just wrong, like the temperature was slightly off from what it should be. And there was a smell. Faint, almost imperceptible. Not the chemical smell Mrs. Rodriguez had mentioned. This was more organic, like mold, or old paper, or something that had been shut up in a dark place for too long. I stood very still and listened. At first, nothing. Then, so faint I almost missed it, a sound. A whisper? No, not quite. More like the memory of a whisper, the echo of something said a long time ago. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. I hit record and held the phone up. This is Special Agent Daniel Mason. November 14th, 2019, approximately 11:15 a.m. I'm inside the apartment at 2849 Lombard Street, Apartment B. I walked slowly through the main room, describing what I saw into the phone. The futon, the table, the kitchen with its old appliances and peeling linoleum floor. Everything normal, everything wrong. That's when I noticed the wall. It was the same wall from the Polaroid, I was sure of it. Off-white paint, a different shade from the other walls, like it had been repainted at some point. No pictures hanging on it. No shelves. Just blank space. I walked over and put my hand against it. The paint was cold, much colder than it should have been. I spread my fingers, feeling the texture. Smooth. Recently painted, maybe within the last few years. I knelt down and looked at the baseboard where the wall met the floor. There, almost invisible unless you were looking for it, was a faint pencil line. Words, written in the same careful handwriting as in the photograph. Still here, still listening, still waiting. No capitals, no punctuation, just those 6 words, written so small and faint that they'd been missed by whoever painted over the wall. My phone was still recording. I held it close to the baseboard. There's writing here. Same handwriting as in the 1987 photograph. It says, still here, still listening, still waiting. I stood up. The apartment felt smaller now, the walls closer. That faint smell was stronger. Not mold, not decay. Something else. Something I couldn't identify. I put my ear against the wall and listened. At first, nothing. Then, very faintly, a sound. Not voices exactly, more like the murmur of many voices, all talking at once, too distant and overlapped to make out individual words. Like standing outside a crowded restaurant, hearing the general hum of conversation without being able to distinguish any of it. But there was no restaurant behind this wall. According to the building layout, this wall bordered the alley between this building and the next. There should be nothing behind it but empty space and the exterior wall of the neighboring building. I pressed my ear harder against the wall. The murmuring continued, steady and unchanging. And underneath it, something else. A rhythm, like breathing, or waves or a heartbeat. My phone buzzed in my hand, a text message from a number I didn't recognize. Get out of the apartment. I stared at the screen. Before I could respond, another message. They know you're there. I crossed to the balcony door and looked out. The courtyard was still empty. But in one of the windows across the way I saw movement. A figure, standing back from the glass, watching. Too far away and too backlit to make out features. Another text. The file is incomplete. The missing pages explain everything. Check the archive. I typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. Someone who used to work case 447. Get out now. I stepped back into the apartment. my heart rate climbing. The murmuring from the wall seemed louder now, or maybe I was just more aware of it. I could almost make out words. Almost, but not quite. I moved toward the front door, then stopped. There was something in the kitchen I hadn't noticed before. On the counter, next to the coffee maker, was a notebook. I picked it up and flipped through it. It appeared to be a journal. The entries were dated, the most recent from 3 days ago. The handwriting was neat, feminine, Katie Sullivan's journal. I flipped to a random entry from October. The sounds again last night, louder this time. I tried recording them like before, but the app just shows silence. How is that possible? I can hear them so clearly. They sound like they're having a conversation, but I can't make out the words. It's like listening to people talk in a dream. You know they're saying important things, but you can't remember what when you wake up. Another entry from early November. I've started leaving my phone recording all night. Every morning I play it back, just silence, hours of silence. But I hear them. I know I'm not crazy. Mrs. Rodriguez told me she heard them too, back when she lived next door. She said everyone who's lived here has heard them. Why do they only come at night? What are they waiting for? The most recent entry, from 3 days ago. I found something. Behind the medicine cabinet in the bathroom. There's a space in the wall like a small hollow cavity. Inside was a piece of paper, old and yellowed. It had names written on it. 5 names. I recognized one of them, Thomas Vickers. The others I don't know. At the bottom of the paper someone wrote, "We heard them too. We tried to tell someone. Don't make our mistake." I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to call. The police won't believe me. I'm not even sure I believe me. I set down the journal and walked quickly to the bathroom. It was tiny, barely room to turn around. The medicine cabinet was mounted on the wall above the sink. I opened it. The usual bathroom items inside. Toothpaste, deodorant, bottles of over-the-counter medications. I pulled the cabinet off the wall. The screws came out easily, like they'd been removed and replaced multiple times. Behind it was a rectangular opening, about 8 inches by 12 inches. The drywall had been cut away, exposing the studs and the dark space between them. I pulled out my phone flashlight and shone it into the opening. There was something in there. A piece of paper, folded and yellowed with age. I reached in and pulled it out carefully. It was a typed list, the paper thin and brittle. Thomas Vickers, March 1987, Robert Hayes. April 1987, Michael Brennan. April 1987, Leonard Sutter. May 1987, James Peterson. May 1987. Below the list, in pencil, someone had written, "We heard them too. We tried to tell someone. Don't make our mistake." And below that, in different handwriting, more recent, "They want us to listen. That's how they get in. KS. KS, Katie Sullivan." My hands were shaking. I took a photograph of the paper, then carefully put it back in the wall cavity and replaced the medicine cabinet. I had to get out. I had to get this information to someone. But who? The Bureau. What would I tell them? That a closed case from 1987 involved agents who no longer existed in any records. That the apartment they investigated still had voices in the walls. That 5 people had heard something that changed them. I walked back through the apartment toward the balcony. The murmuring from the wall continued, steady and patient. I was almost to the door when I heard something that made me freeze. A voice from the wall. Clear and distinct this time. Not muffled or distant. Close. As if someone was standing right on the other side, speaking directly through the paint and drywall. It said, "Daniel." My name. My first name, which I hadn't spoken aloud since entering the apartment. I stood perfectly still, my hand on the balcony door handle. The voice came again. Daniel Mason, we've been waiting for you. Not one voice. Many voices, speaking in unison. Men and women, old and young, all saying the same words at exactly the same time. Don't leave yet. We need to tell you something. We need to show you something. I pulled the door open and stepped onto the balcony. Come back, Daniel. Look at the wall. Really look at it. You'll understand. I climbed over the balcony railing and dropped into the courtyard. My knees jarred from the impact, but I kept moving. I climbed the fence and ran around the building to where my car was parked. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. Did they speak to you? I got in my car, locked the doors, and sat there, breathing hard. My hands were still shaking. I looked at my phone. The voice recording was still running. I'd been recording the entire time. I stopped the recording and immediately played it back, skipping to the end. My voice. I was almost to the door when I heard something that made me freeze. Then nothing. No voice saying my name, no chorus of voices, just silence. And the faint sound of my footsteps. And then the scrape of the balcony door opening. I played it again. Same result. The voices weren't there. The recording captured everything except the voices. Just like Katie Sullivan's recordings. I drove. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just drove through the Marina District, into the Presidio, along the coast where the fog was rolling in off the ocean. I needed to think. I needed to process what had just happened. The logical explanations lined up. Stress, suggestion, carbon monoxide poisoning, infrasound. The power of suggestion combined with knowledge of the case history. All of these could explain hearing voices. All of them could explain the feeling of wrongness, the sensation that something was very wrong with that apartment. But they didn't explain the list of names. They didn't explain 2 FBI agents vanishing from the records. They didn't explain why the case was sealed. They didn't explain the missing pages from the file. And they definitely didn't explain how the voices knew my name. I pulled into a parking lot overlooking the ocean. The fog was thick here, reducing visibility to maybe 20 feet. I could hear the waves crashing against the rocks below, but couldn't see them. The world was just gray and sound. I opened my phone and looked at the photograph I'd taken of the list. 5 names. 5 people connected to apartment B in 1987. Thomas Vickers had disappeared. That much was clear from the file. But what about the others? Robert Hayes and Michael Brennan were the investigating agents. According to Gerald Kirkland and the Bureau's database, they didn't exist. But they had existed. They'd written reports. They'd visited the apartment multiple times, and then, sometime in April or May of 1987, they'd become part of whatever case number 47 SF had been about. Leonard Sutter was the neighbor who'd called it in. Mrs. Rodriguez said he'd moved out suddenly, right after the FBI came. Had he just moved? Or had something happened to him too? And James Peterson. That name sounded familiar. I pulled out the file and flipped through the pages. There, on one of the memos from April, the one recommending escalation. It was addressed to SAC Peterson, Special Agent in Charge Peterson, the head of the San Francisco field office in 1987. All 5 names on the list were connected to the investigation, and according to the note, all 5 had heard them. I called the Bureau's personnel office in Washington, D.C. It was late afternoon on the East Coast, but someone answered. "This is Special Agent Mason, San Francisco field office. I need historical personnel information for the San Francisco SAC position in 1987. "One moment." I heard typing. 1977. The SAC was Lawrence Thompson from 1985 to 1989. Not James Peterson. No record of a Peterson serving as SAC in San Francisco. Was he an ASAC, maybe? Maybe. Can you check for any James Peterson in the San Francisco office in the 80s? More typing. No records found. What about Robert Hayes or Michael Brennan? No records for either of those names. I thanked her and hung up. 5 names, no records, as if they'd been erased or had never existed in the first place. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. The missing pages are in the archive, not in the file box. Somewhere else. Someone hid them, someone who knew. I typed, "Who are you?" Someone who got out before it was too late. Basement of the federal building. Sub-basement. Below B2. There's a level that's not on the maps. That's where they put the things they don't want found. Sub-basement, below B2. I'd worked in the federal building for 12 years and never heard of anything below the archive level. How do I access it? I typed. The elevator, after hours. Use the maintenance override. Code is 4475. Why are you helping me? Because you're already in too deep. Because I was where you are 32 years ago. Because they deserve to be known. Who deserves to be known? No response. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. No more messages came. I drove back toward downtown. The fog was everywhere now, turning the city into a maze of uncertain shapes and dimmed lights. Traffic moved slowly, headlights creating tunnels of visibility that collapsed as soon as you passed through them. I reached the federal building around 4 p.m. I parked in the garage and sat in my car, thinking through what I was about to do, breaking into a sub-basement that officially didn't exist, based on texts from an unknown number, to find missing pages from a case that was sealed, all because I'd heard voices in an apartment that said my name. It sounded insane when I put it like that. But I'd come too far to stop now. I waited until 6 p.m., when most of the office would be empty. Then I took the elevator up to the 5th floor, went to my desk, and retrieved the file from my locked drawer. I also grabbed my flashlight and my service weapon, though I wasn't sure what I expected to use it against. At 7 p.m., the office was almost deserted. I took the elevator down to B2. The doors opened onto the familiar beige hallway. The archive door was locked, as expected. My credentials still didn't work, but the elevator had another panel, hidden behind a maintenance plate at knee height. I'd never noticed it before, but when I knelt down and pried it open with my pocket knife, there it was. A small keypad with numbers 09. I typed 4475. The panel beeped, the elevator doors closed, and with a slight jolt, the car began descending again, below B2, into a level I didn't know existed. The doors opened onto darkness. I stepped out of the elevator into a hallway that shouldn't exist. The air was different here, colder, drier, with that particular staleness that comes from long-term isolation. The walls were unpainted concrete, the floor unfinished. A single emergency light provided minimal illumination, casting everything in a red-tinged glow. The elevator doors closed behind me with a pneumatic hiss that echoed in the silence. For a moment, I considered getting back in, going up, pretending I'd never found this place. But the file was heavy in my hands, and the voices from the apartment were still echoing in my mind. "Daniel Mason, we've been waiting for you." I turned on my flashlight. The hallway extended maybe 60 feet before ending at a T-junction. No signs, no markings, nothing to indicate what this level was for or why it existed. The concrete walls were rough, showing the marks of wooden forms that had held them while they cured. This was old construction, probably original to the building. My footsteps echoed as I walked. The sound was wrong, though. Instead of the sharp report of shoes on concrete, it was muffled, as if the space absorbed sound differently than it should. I stopped and stood still, listening. Silence. complete and total. No hum of ventilation systems. No distant traffic sounds from above, nothing. Just the ringing silence of deep underground spaces. I reached the T-junction and shone my light both directions. To the left, the hallway continued for another 50 feet before ending at a door. To the right, more darkness, with multiple doorways visible along the walls. I went right. The first doorway opened into a storage room filled with old office furniture. Desks from the 70s, chairs with ripped upholstery, filing cabinets with their drawers hanging open and empty. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust. Nobody had been in here for years, maybe decades. The second doorway was locked. I tried my credentials on the card reader next to it. Access denied. But unlike the archive door upstairs, this one looked older, less maintained. The lock mechanism was visible through a gap in the doorframe. I'd learned lock-picking in training, though we were never supposed to actually use it without authorization. I pulled out my wallet and extracted a credit card, then worked it into the gap. After a minute of wiggling, I felt the latch give. The door opened into another storage room, but this one was different. Instead of old furniture, it held boxes. Dozens of cardboard file boxes stacked on metal shelving that ran from floor to ceiling. Each box was labeled with a number range. I ran my flashlight across the labels. Answer 150, number 51 100, number 100 150. I found what I was looking for about halfway down the room. Number 440 SF through number 450 SF. The same range as the box upstairs, but this was a different box. I pulled it down and set it on the floor. The cardboard was brittle with age, the corners crushed from years of weight. I opened it carefully. Inside were 11 manila folders, each labeled with a case number. I found 4447 SF and pulled it out. This folder was thicker than the one upstairs. Much thicker. I opened it. The first page was identical to the one in the official file. Same cover sheet, same basic information. But behind it were the missing pages. Pages 13 to 17. Pages 28 to 29. Pages 34 to 36. All the pages that had been removed from the file upstairs. I sat down on the concrete floor and started reading. Field report. Follow-up investigation. Date: March 18, 1987 agents. Special Agent Robert Hayes, Special Agent Michael Brennan. Following initial entry on March 12th, agents returned to 2849 Lombard Street, Apartment B with forensic support. Subject Thomas Vickers was not present. Apartment appeared abandoned, though personal effects remained. Forensics team conducted thorough examination of the premises. Of particular concern was the west-facing wall in the main room. Visual examination revealed no abnormalities, but acoustic testing produced unusual results. When forensics specialist Marcus Webb placed an electronic stethoscope against the wall, he reported hearing what he described as conversation emanating from within the wall cavity. Multiple distinct voices, speaking in overlapping patterns. Content of conversation could not be determined. This agent, Hayes, also listened and can confirm the presence of audible sounds within the wall. The sounds are inconsistent with standard wall cavity noises, plumbing, electrical, rodent activity. They exhibit patterns consistent with human speech but rendered unintelligible by apparent distance and/or acoustic distortion. Building superintendent was consulted regarding possible audio transmission from neighboring apartments or external sources. He stated that the wall in question is an exterior wall, with no adjacent apartment or other occupied space. The neighboring building is separated by an alley of approximately 8 feet. Forensics team examined the wall construction. The wall consists of standard wood framing with drywall on the interior and brick facing on the exterior. No cavities or unusual construction elements that would explain the sounds were found. At approximately 16:30 hours, Subject Vickers returned to the apartment. When confronted by agents, he became agitated and refused to answer questions. He stated only, "I tried to ignore them. I tried to pretend they weren't there. But they know I can hear them now. They know." Subject Vickers was taken into custody for questioning under suspicion of drug possession or use. He was transported to the field office at 17:15 hours. The report continued with details of the questioning. I flipped through the pages quickly, my heart pounding. Vickers had been interrogated for 3 hours. He'd refused to explain what they were. He'd refused to say who or what he'd heard in the walls. He'd only repeated, over and over, "They're waiting. They've been waiting, not for me, for someone else. I'm just in the way." Eventually, they'd released him. No drugs were found in his system. No evidence of psychosis or mental breakdown. He was coherent, rational, and absolutely terrified. The next page was a memo from Hayes to Isaac Peterson, dated April 2nd, 1987. This was the memo that had been partially visible in the upstairs file with the recommendation for escalation. But here it was complete. Memorandum. To SAC James Peterson. From S.A. Robert Hayes. Date April 2nd, 1987. Free. Case 47SF. Urgent escalation request, sir. Special Agent Brennan and I have continued investigation of the apartment at 2849 Lombard Street. We have returned to the location multiple times, including late-night observations. The acoustic phenomenon previously reported has continued and appears to be intensifying. More concerning, both Agent Brennan and I have begun experiencing auditory events outside of the apartment. Last night, while working late in the office, I heard distinct voices emanating from the walls of my office. The voices were similar in character to those heard in the apartment. Multiple speakers, overlapping, unintelligible content. Agent Brennan has reported similar experiences in his home. Additionally, Subject Vickers has been admitted to SF General Hospital Psychiatric Ward. According to hospital staff, he was found in Golden Gate Park, attempting to dig through the ground with his bare hands. When restrained, he stated he was trying to get away from the voices, to go where they can't follow. Sir, I believe we are dealing with a phenomenon that extends beyond standard criminal investigation parameters. I recommend immediate escalation to specialized oversight and that Agent Brennan and I be removed from direct investigation pending psychological evaluation. Whatever is happening in that apartment, it appears to be transmissible. We need to contain this before it spreads further. Respectfully, S.A. Robert Hayes. I sat back against the metal shelving. The concrete was cold against my back. The emergency lighting cast everything in red. Transmissible. Hayes thought the voices were transmissible, like a disease. Hear them once, and they follow you. They get inside your head. I thought about the apartment, about pressing my ear against the wall, about the voices saying my name. Had I been infected? Is that what this was? I forced myself to keep reading. The next document was dated April 15th, 1987. It was a different kind of form, one I'd never seen before. The header read, Classification Review, Unusual Phenomena Division. I'd never heard of an Unusual Phenomena Division. The form detailed a decision to transfer case number 4447SF to specialized oversight and to implement standard containment protocols. Both Hayes and Brennan were to be debriefed and monitored. Subject Vickers was to be transferred to specialized care facility. But it was the last paragraph that made my blood run cold. Additional parties showing exposure symptoms. Leonard Sutter, civilian, SAC, James Peterson. Both subjects have reported auditory phenomena consistent with primary exposure. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 7. I didn't know what Protocol 7 was, but 5 names had been on the list in the apartment. All 5 had been exposed to the voices, and according to this document, all 5 had been transferred or monitored or subjected to some kind of protocol. The final pages in the folder were medical reports. Psychological evaluations of Hayes and Brennan, dated April 16th to 20th, 1987. I skimmed them quickly. Both agents had been examined by FBI psychologists. Both reported persistent auditory hallucinations. Both described the same phenomenon: voices in walls, ceilings, floors. Multiple voices speaking in unison, saying things that were almost, but not quite comprehensible. The psychologist's conclusions were identical for both agents. Subject shows no signs of psychosis, schizophrenia, or other psychiatric disorders. Cognitive function normal. Subject's descriptions of auditory phenomena are detailed and consistent, but no physiological cause can be determined. Recommend continued monitoring. But there was a handwritten note at the bottom of Brennan's evaluation, in different ink, added later. Subject terminated employment May 18, 1987. Current whereabouts unknown. And on Hayes's evaluation, subject placed on extended medical leave May 18, 1987. No further contact with Bureau. May 18, 1987. 5 days before the case was officially closed for administrative error. Both agents had simply disappeared. I closed the folder and sat in the red-lit silence of the sub-basement, trying to process what I'd learned. In March 1987, something had started in that apartment. Thomas Vickers had heard voices in the walls. FBI agents had been called. They'd heard the voices too. And then everyone who'd been significantly exposed, Vickers, Hayes, Brennan, Sutter, Peterson, had either disappeared or been removed from records. The case had been sealed, buried in a sub-basement that officially didn't exist, and life had gone on as if none of it had ever happened, except it hadn't stopped. 32 years later, people were still hearing voices in that apartment. Katie Sullivan heard them. Mrs. Rodriguez had heard them, and now I'd heard them too. My phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number. You found the files, now you understand. Protocol 7 means erasure. They don't kill you. They just make it so you never existed. Every record, every photograph, every mention of your name. Gone. Like you were never born. I typed back, "Who are you? Are you one of the agents?" "I'm someone who was supposed to be erased but wasn't. Someone who got away before they could implement the protocol. Someone who's been watching Case 47 for 32 years, waiting for someone like you to come along." Why me? Because the file was sent to you specifically. That memo you received? I sent it. I've been trying to get someone to investigate for years, but everyone ignores it or gets scared off. But you're different. You went to the apartment, you heard them. You're already exposed. You can't back out now. What are they? The voices? I don't know. Nobody knows. But I know what they want. They want to be heard. They want someone to listen. And once you listen, really listen, they can reach you anywhere. Through any wall, any floor, any barrier. They get inside your head and they never leave. How do I stop it? A long pause. Then, you can't. Once you're exposed, they're with you forever. But you can choose how you respond. You can ignore them, pretend they're not there. Or you can listen, really listen. Understand what they're saying. That's what Hayes and Brennan tried to do. That's why they were erased. Did they understand? I think so. I think that's why they had to be removed. Because they learned something. something that couldn't be known. I stood up, my legs stiff from sitting on the concrete. I need to talk to you in person. Can we meet? No, it's too dangerous. They're watching the case. They know someone checked out the file. They're looking for you. If we meet, they'll find me too. Then what do I do? Finish reading the files. There's one more document in that box, the last page of Hayes' final report. He was writing it when they came for him. He didn't get to finish, but what he wrote, it explains everything, or at least everything he understood. I opened the folder again and flipped through the pages. There, at the very end, was a single sheet of paper, different from the others. It was handwritten, the letters shaky, as if written in a hurry or under great stress. Final report. Unfinished. Agent Robert Hayes. May 17, 1987. Personal notes. Not for official file. They're not voices. That's what we got wrong from the beginning. They're not sounds at all. They're something else, something that our brains interpret as sound because we don't have any other framework for processing it. I've spent the last month listening to them, really listening, the way Peterson told me not to, and I understand now. They're not trying to scare us. They're not evil or malevolent, they're just there. They've always been there, in the walls, in the ground, in the spaces between things. We built our cities on top of them and never knew. The apartment on Lombard Street is just a thin place, a spot where the barrier is weaker, where they can be heard more easily, but they're everywhere. Once you learn to hear them, you realize they're in every building, every structure, every place humans have tried to claim as their own. Vickers heard them first because he was sensitive. Something about his brain, his perception, made him more receptive. When we investigated, Brennan and I became sensitive too. Like we caught it from him. And now Peterson has it, and Sutter, and probably others we don't know about. The voices don't want anything from us. They're not trying to communicate or influence or control. They're just there, existing in their own way, and we're the ones who've intruded on their space. We're the ones who need to adapt. But the Bureau can't accept that. They can't accept that there's something in the world that doesn't fit their understanding of reality, so they're going to erase us. Peterson told me yesterday that Protocol 7 has been authorized. We're going to be disappeared. Our records will be expunged, our cases reassigned, our lives rewritten so we never existed. I'm writing this so someone will know, so someone will understand that we weren't crazy, we weren't hallucinating. We just heard something that's always been there, that most people filter out without realizing. If you're reading this, you've probably heard them too, and you're probably scared. Don't be. They're not the enemy. The people who want to erase us, they're the enemy. They're the ones who can't handle the truth that reality is stranger and more complex than they want to believe. Listen to the voices. Don't fight them. They're part of the world, just like the report ended there. Mid-sentence. As if Hayes had been interrupted and never got a chance to finish. I read it twice, 3 times. My hands were shaking. They're not sounds at all. They're something that our brains interpret as sound. What did that mean? Some kind of electromagnetic field? Infrasound below the range of normal hearing? Or something even stranger, something that existed outside the normal rules of physics? My phone buzzed again. Did you read it? Yes. Do you understand? I don't know. He didn't finish. He said they're not sounds, but he didn't explain what they are. Because he couldn't. Language isn't equipped to describe them. But he was right about one thing. They're not dangerous. The only danger comes from the people who want to keep this secret. The people who implement Protocol 7. Is that why you're hiding? Are you in Protocol 7? I was supposed to be. But I ran before they could finish. changed my name, left the bureau, disappeared into civilian life. For 32 years I've been watching, waiting, trying to find someone who could bring this to light, someone who could make people understand. I'm just one agent. What am I supposed to do? Document everything. Make copies. Spread it wide enough that they can't contain it. And most importantly, keep listening. The more you listen, the more you'll understand. Hayes was starting to figure it out before they took him. You can finish what he started. I looked around the sub-basement. The red emergency lighting, the concrete walls, the boxes of erased cases stacked on metal shelves. How many other investigations had ended up down here? How many other agents had found something that didn't fit the Bureau's understanding of reality? What happened to the others? I typed. Hayes, Brennan, Vickers, Sutter, Peterson. Are they dead? I don't know. Protocol 7 means erasure, but I don't know if that means death or just removal. A facility somewhere, maybe. A place where they keep people who know too much. I've tried to find them over the years. No luck. It's like they stepped through a door and vanished from the world. I took photographs of every page in the folder with my phone. The original reports, the memos, the psychological evaluations, Hayes's final notes. Everything. If they were going to erase this, I wanted copies that couldn't be taken back. When I finished, I returned the folder to the box and the box to the shelf. I stood there for a moment, looking at the rows and rows of similar boxes, each one containing a case that had been buried, each one representing someone who'd found something the Bureau couldn't explain. I walked back to the elevator and pressed the button. While I waited, I listened to the silence of the sub-basement, and underneath the silence, very faintly, I heard it, the murmur of many voices coming from the walls around me. They were here too, in the federal building, in this buried level that officially didn't exist. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, I took one last look at the sub-basement hallway, lit in red, stretching back into darkness. The voices were getting louder. It's been 3 weeks since I found the files in the sub-basement. I'm writing this in my apartment at 2 a.m. because I can't sleep. Because the voices are always there now, murmuring behind every wall, in every room, following me wherever I go. I haven't returned to the office. I called in sick for a week, then took accumulated vacation time. SSA Grant has left several messages asking when I'll be back. I haven't returned his calls. I know what happened to the others now. I know why Hayes and Brennan and Vickers and Sutter and Peterson were erased. It's because once you really hear the voices, once you accept what they are, you can't function in the normal world anymore. You can't pretend that reality is what everyone thinks it is. You become dangerous, not because you're violent or unstable, but because you know something that breaks the consensus. The file is still in my possession. I've made copies. Digital copies uploaded to cloud storage under fake accounts. Physical copies mailed to addresses around the country, to be opened if anything happens to me. I've documented everything in emails set to send if I don't cancel them each week. I don't think it will matter. 2 days ago, I received a visit from a man in a gray suit. He didn't give me his name. He just showed me credentials I'd never seen before, from an agency designation I'd never heard of. He asked me politely to return file number 4447 SF to the federal building. He said it had been checked out in error and needed to be properly reclassified. I told him I'd returned it weeks ago. He smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. He said that wasn't what their records showed. He said he'd be back in 48 hours, and if I didn't have the file by then, there would be consequences. I haven't slept since that conversation. I went back to Lombard Street yesterday. Katie Sullivan wasn't home, but Mrs. Rodriguez let me into her apartment. We sat in her living room and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her hands folded in her lap, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she said, "I've been hearing them for 30 years. They're always there, in the background. At first it frightened me, then I got used to it. Now it's almost comforting, like living near train tracks. You stop noticing after a while. But don't you want to know what they are?" I asked. "No," she said. "Some things are better left unknown. You can live with mysteries, Agent Mason. You can live a full life knowing there are things you don't understand. The problems start when you try to understand them." She was probably right. But I couldn't stop now. I went back to apartment B. The balcony door was unlocked again. I stood in the main room and listened to the voices coming from the wall. They were clearer now than they'd been 3 weeks ago. I could almost make out words. Almost. I pressed my hand against the wall, the same spot where the writing had been. The paint was cold under my palm. The voices murmured and hummed. And then, very clearly, I heard, "Daniel Mason, you're listening now. You're really listening. Good. We need listeners. We need witnesses. Stay with us. Don't let them take you away." It wasn't scary anymore. Mrs. Rodriguez was right. Once you accept it, once you stop fighting it, the fear goes away. What remains is just presence. The sense that you're not alone, that you've never been alone, that the spaces between things are full of something vast and incomprehensible. I don't know what will happen when the man in the gray suit comes back. I don't know if I'll be erased like the others, or if the copies I've made will protect me, or if any of this matters at all. What I do know is this: the voices are real. They're not hallucinations or mental illness or tricks of acoustics. They're something that exists in the world, something we've built our cities on top of without realizing. And once you hear them, once you really hear them, they become part of your reality. The file is incomplete. It will always be incomplete. There are questions that don't have answers. There are things that can't be explained in language or documented in reports. Thomas Vickers understood this. So did Hayes and Brennan and Peterson and Sutter. That's why they were erased. I'll probably be erased too. But I wanted to write this down first. I wanted someone to know that case number 447SF wasn't closed because of an administrative error. It was closed because what happened in that apartment on Lombard Street couldn't be allowed to exist in the official record. Because it challenged everything the Bureau, everything society, believes about the nature of reality. I'm sitting at my kitchen table now. It's almost 3 a.m. The city is quiet outside my window, wrapped in fog as always. And behind the walls of my apartment, in the spaces between the studs and the wiring and the pipes, I can hear them. They're waiting. They've always been waiting. Not for me specifically, just for anyone who will listen. I checked the Bureau's personnel database this morning. My entry is still there, but it's started to change. Small things. My start date is wrong now. The cases I'm listed as working on don't match my memory. It's subtle, but it's happening. They're erasing me. I estimate I have maybe 48 hours before I'm gone completely. Before every record of Special Agent Daniel Mason is altered or removed. Before my apartment lease reverts to someone else's name and my bank accounts disappear and even the people who knew me start forgetting. This is the last thing I'll write. The last record that I existed and that I investigated case number 447SF and that I heard the voices in the walls. If you're reading this, it means one of my dead man's switches worked. It means the file I buried has been found. And it probably means you've started hearing them too. Don't fight it. Don't pretend they're not there. Listen. Really listen. They're not evil, they're not dangerous. They're just there, existing in the spaces we thought were empty. And once you accept that, once you let go of the need to explain or control or understand, I can hear them right now, coming from the kitchen wall. They're speaking in unison, all those voices, saying something I can almost understand. My name is Special Agent Rebecca Nolan, and for the last 8 years I've worked dispatch coordination for the FBI's San Francisco field office. It's not glamorous work. Most people don't even know my job exists. While agents are out in the field chasing leads and making arrests, I'm in a windowless room on the 4th floor, monitoring radio frequencies, logging calls, coordinating responses between local PD and federal units. It's a job that requires precision. Every call logged, every transmission recorded, every piece of communication documented and time-stamped. The system is designed to be perfect. No gaps, no errors, no mystery. Until October 27, 2019, I would have told you the system was infallible. That was the night I received a call that never existed. I work the night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. It's quieter than days, fewer calls, less radio chatter, more time to catch up on paperwork. The dispatch room is small, maybe 15 by 20 feet, with 6 workstations arranged in 2 rows. On night shift, it's usually just me and one other coordinator, Marcus Sullivan. Marcus had been doing this for 12 years. Former military communications specialist, the kind of guy who could identify a radio frequency by the static pattern alone. We worked well together. Minimal conversation, maximum efficiency. In 8 years, we'd never had a significant error in our logs. October 27th started like any other Sunday night. Foggy, cold, the kind of San Francisco evening where the mist clings to your skin. I arrived at the Federal Building at 10:45 p.m., took the elevator to the 4th floor, and relieved the evening coordinator, a younger woman named Lisa Park. "Quiet night," she said, gathering her things. 2 domestic disturbance calls forwarded to SFPD, 1 suspicious package that turned out to be someone's lunch, standard Sunday. I settled into my station and began the routine checks. 6 radio frequencies to monitor, each one connected to different federal units or liaison channels with local law enforcement. The computer system logged everything automatically, but we maintained paper backups as well. Redundancy was part of the protocol. Marcus came in at 11:05, carrying his usual thermos of coffee. He nodded at me and took his station 2 desks over. The room settled into its familiar rhythm, the low hum of electronics, the occasional squawk of radio traffic, the soft clicking of keyboards. At 2:17 a.m., everything changed. The call came through on frequency 7. Frequency 7 was our federal emergency channel, reserved for urgent field agent communications. It was rarely used, maybe once or twice a month, usually for high-priority situations requiring immediate coordination. The voice that came through was male, mid-30s maybe, speaking quickly but clearly. There was background noise I couldn't identify. Not traffic, not wind, something else. A low, humming sound, almost mechanical. "This is Agent. I need immediate assistance. My location is..." Static interrupted. "Warehouse District, near Pier 92. I'm in pursuit of a suspect requesting backup. The suspect is..." More static. "Armed and dangerous. I repeat, armed and dangerous. My badge number is..." The transmission cut out completely. I immediately keyed my microphone. "Frequency 7, this is dispatch. Please repeat your last transmission. Confirm your badge number and exact location." Silence. I tried again. "Agent calling on frequency 7, please respond. Confirm your status." Nothing. I looked over at Marcus. He was already pulling up the frequency log on his computer. "Did you catch a badge number?" he asked. "No, it cut out. Play back the recording." Every transmission is automatically recorded by the system. Marcus accessed the digital archive and pulled up the timestamp for 2:17 a.m., frequency 7. We listened to the playback together, both of us leaning toward his monitor. The recording showed only static. No voice, no words. Just 30 seconds of baseline radio noise. "That's not right," I said. "We both heard it." "I heard it too," Marcus confirmed. He ran a system diagnostic. "Audio capture is functioning normally, no errors logged." "Play it again." He did. Same result. Static only. I returned to my station and checked my own audio log. Same thing. The transmission at 2:17 a.m. showed nothing but background noise. "Could it have come through on a different frequency?" Marcus asked. I checked all 6 channels. Nothing. No transmissions at 2:17 a.m. on any frequency except the static on frequency 7. "We need to respond anyway," I said. "Even if the recording's corrupted, we heard a call for assistance. Agent in pursuit near Pier 92. Suspect armed and dangerous." I picked up the phone and cautious and called SFPD dispatch. A tired-sounding woman answered. "This is FBI dispatch coordination," I said. "We received a possible federal agent assistance call, requesting patrol units to Pier 92 area, Warehouse District. Agent in pursuit of armed suspect." "Received. Dispatching 2 units now. Do you have a description of the agent or suspect?" "Negative. Transmission was broken. We're trying to establish contact now." "Copy that. We'll report any findings." I hung up and immediately began calling field agents. We had 12 agents on call rotation that night. I started with the list, calling each one. All 12 answered. All 12 confirmed they were not near Pier 92 and had not called for assistance. Marcus was doing his own check, pulling up GPS tracking for all federal vehicles. None were in the warehouse district. None had been there in the last 4 hours. "Someone might be using personal vehicle," I said. "Without logging it, that's against protocol. People break protocol." At 2:34 a.m., SFPD called back. "FBI dispatch, this is Unit 7 Adam. We're at Pier 92. Area is clear. No signs of pursuit. No agents. No suspects. What's your agent's name? We'll do a more thorough search." "We don't have a name." The transmission was corrupted. A pause. "You called us out here for a corrupted transmission?" "We heard the call clearly. Both coordinators confirmed it. The recording is corrupted, but the call was real." Another pause. "All right, we'll do a sweep of the warehouse district. But I'm telling you, it's empty out here. Just fog and closed buildings." They spent 45 minutes searching. Found nothing. No agent, no suspect, no evidence of any pursuit or confrontation. The warehouse district near Pier 92 was completely deserted. At 3:20 a.m., they cleared and went back to normal patrol. Marcus and I sat in the dispatch room, both staring at our screens. "Technical glitch," Marcus finally said. "Has to be. Audio somehow bypassed the recording system but came through the speakers. Both speakers simultaneously, yours and mine? Shared system. Could be a processing error." It was the logical explanation, but it felt wrong. The voice had been too clear, too specific. Agent in pursuit, armed and dangerous. Badge number starting to be read before the static cut in. "We need to file an incident report," I said. "For what? A glitch?" "For an unverified assistance call. Protocol requires documentation." I spent the next hour writing up the incident report. Time of call, frequency, content of transmission, response actions taken, outcome. I noted the recording anomaly. I noted that both coordinators had heard the call clearly but that audio logs showed only static. At the end of the report, I added, "Recommend technical inspection of recording system to identify cause of capture failure." I submitted it through the system at 4:25 a.m. The rest of the night passed without incident. When I went home at 7:15 a.m., The sun was just starting to burn off the fog. I drove across the city to my apartment in the Richmond district, my mind still replaying that voice. "This is Agent. I need immediate assistance." Who had it been? And why hadn't the system recorded it? I slept poorly that day. When I woke up around 3 p.m., I had an email from the communications supervisor, a man named Douglas Fletcher. The subject line read, Incident Report, 10/27/19. I opened it. Agent Nolan, reviewed your incident report from last night. Technical inspection of dispatch system shows no errors or anomalies. All equipment functioning within normal parameters. Recording system operating correctly. Given that no agent was located at the reported location, no federal vehicles were in the area, and all on-call agents confirmed they did not make the transmission, we are classifying this incident as a misinterpretation of background radio noise. Please note that all transmissions are recorded and time-stamped automatically. If a transmission occurred at 2:17 a.m. on frequency 7, it would be in the system. Since it is not, no transmission occurred. In the future, please verify the legitimacy of transmissions before initiating multi-unit responses. False alarms waste valuable law enforcement resources. The incident report has been updated to reflect these findings and filed accordingly. Douglas Fletcher, Supervisory Communications Coordinator. I read the email 3 times. Misinterpretation of background radio noise. Marcus and I had both heard it. Clearly. A full transmission with multiple sentences. An agent requesting backup. A suspect described as armed and dangerous. A badge number being read before the static. That wasn't background noise. That was a communication. But according to Fletcher, according to the system, it had never happened. I called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. "Yeah, I got the same email," he said before I could speak. Misinterpretation of radio noise, load of bureaucratic bullshit. We both heard it. I know we did, but if the system says it didn't happen, then officially it didn't happen. That's how this works, Rebecca. We log what the system records. If the system doesn't record it, it's not real. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. It's policy. He paused. "Look, I've been doing this for 12 years. Sometimes weird shit happens with radio frequencies. Atmospheric conditions, equipment interference, cross-channel bleed. It's not perfect. We heard something, sure, but what we heard might not have been what we thought we heard. It was clear. Memory is unreliable, especially at 2 a.m. after hours of monitoring static. We could have filled in gaps, interpreted noise as words. It happens. Do you really believe that?" A longer pause. "I believe that arguing with Fletcher is a good way to end up on day shift filing paperwork. And I like night shift. So yeah, I believe it." He hung up. I sat in my apartment, looking out at the gray afternoon, and tried to let it go. Tried to accept Fletcher's explanation. Misinterpretation. Background noise. Memory unreliable. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That night, I went back to work at my regular time. Marcus was already there, working on his computer. He didn't look up when I came in. "Marcus," I said. "We're not talking about it," he replied, eyes still on his screen. "It's closed. Move on." I moved on. We settled into the routine. The 6 frequencies hummed and crackled with their usual traffic. Nothing unusual. At 2:17 a.m. I found myself watching frequency 7's display, waiting. Nothing happened, just static. The rest of the week passed normally. No strange calls, no unexplained transmissions. I started to think maybe Fletcher was right. Maybe it had been some kind of audio pareidolia, our brains finding patterns in random noise. But then, 6 days later, On November 2nd, it happened again. 2:17 a.m. Exactly, the same voice on frequency 7. "This is Agent. I need immediate assistance. My location is Warehouse District near Pier 92. I'm in pursuit of a suspect, requesting backup." Every word identical to the first transmission. The same pauses in the same places. The same background humming sound. Even the static cutouts at the exact same moments. It was a recording. Someone was playing the same transmission. Marcus and I looked at each other across the dispatch room. "You heard that," I said. "I heard it." We pulled up the digital log. 2:17 a.m., frequency 7. Static only. "This is impossible," Marcus said. His hands were shaking slightly. "The recording system can't be wrong twice. It can't be. We need to document this. Fletcher will shut us down. He'll say we're hearing things that we need psychological evaluation. We both heard it, clear as day. The exact same transmission as last week." Marcus stared at his screen. "What if we're supposed to hear it?" "What do you mean?" "What if someone is broadcasting on a frequency that the recording system can't capture? Some kind of modified signal that goes through the speakers but bypasses digital recording. Why would anyone do that? I don't know, but it's the only explanation that makes sense." He turned to face me. "Or we're both losing our minds at exactly the same time." I picked up the phone to call SFPD, then stopped. If I sent units to Pier 92 again with no verifiable transmission, Fletcher would pull me from dispatch duty. Maybe suspend me. "We need to go there ourselves," I said. "What?" "Right now. We call in a personal emergency, leave early, and drive to Pier 92. If that transmission is real, if someone is out there calling for help, we need to find out." Marcus shook his head. "That's insane. We can't abandon dispatch during a shift. We can call it in as a technical emergency. Say we're having system failures and need to leave for safety reasons. And then what? Drive around the warehouse district looking for an agent who doesn't exist? Do you have a better idea?" He didn't answer. At 2:45 a.m., we called the backup coordinator and reported a potential carbon monoxide issue in the dispatch room. Detectors were malfunctioning, we said, and we needed to evacuate until building maintenance could check it out. It was a lie, but a believable one. 20 minutes later, we were in my car, driving through the fog toward Pier 92. The warehouse district was dark and empty, exactly as SFPD had reported the week before. Old industrial buildings, most of them abandoned or converted to art studios and small businesses that were closed at 3 a.m. The streets were wide and potholed. Fog rolled in from the bay, reducing visibility to maybe 30 feet. We drove slowly through the area, windows down, listening. Nothing. Just the distant sound of foghorns from the bay and the occasional drip of water from building eaves. "This was a mistake," Marcus said. "There's nothing here. There's never been anything here." I pulled over near an old brick warehouse that looked like it had been empty for decades. Chain-link fence around the perimeter, broken windows on the upper floors, graffiti covering the lower walls. "Wait," I said. There was a sound, faint, barely audible over the idling engine. A humming, the same mechanical hum I'd heard in the background of the transmission. I turned off the engine. The humming continued. Marcus heard it too. "What is that?" We got out of the car. The humming was coming from the warehouse. Not from inside the building exactly, but from somewhere near it. Maybe behind it or underneath it. We walked towards the fence. There was a gap where someone had cut through the chain link. We slipped through. The warehouse loading dock was empty. Broken glass crunched under our feet. The humming was louder here, a steady electrical thrum that seemed to vibrate through the ground. "Should we call this in?" Marcus asked. "And say what? We abandoned our post to investigate a sound?" We walked around the side of the building. The humming grew louder, and then I saw it. A metal door set into the ground, the kind that leads to a basement or utility tunnel. It was slightly ajar, and pale light was coming from below. "Someone's down there," Marcus whispered. I knelt next to the door and listened. The humming was definitely coming from below, along with other sounds now. Voices? No, not quite. More like radio static, multiple frequencies overlapping. I pulled the door open wider. Metal stairs led down into a concrete tunnel lit by industrial work lights. The tunnel extended maybe 50 feet before ending at another door. "Rebecca, we should call for backup," Marcus said. But I was already descending the stairs. The tunnel was cold and damp. Water pooled on the floor. The walls were old concrete, cracked and stained. The work lights were modern, though, recently installed, connected by orange extension cords that ran along the ceiling. The humming came from beyond the far door. I reached it and tried the handle. Unlocked, I pushed it open. The room beyond was large, maybe 40 by 60 feet. Former utility room or storage space, now converted into something else. Something that made no sense. Radio equipment filled the space. Not modern equipment. Old vacuum tube receivers, analog transmitters, equipment that looked like it belonged in a museum. They were all connected together with a web of cables and wires, all powered and active. Dials glowed. Needles moved on meters. And from speakers mounted on the walls I could hear it. Dozens of radio transmissions, all playing at once, all overlapping into an incomprehensible wall of sound. In the center of the room was a desk with a microphone and what looked like a modified CB radio, and sitting at the desk, his back to us, was a man. He was wearing a jacket, dark blue, FBI windbreaker. "Sir?" I said. He didn't turn around. Marcus and I approached slowly. The radio noise was overwhelming this close, dozens of voices all talking at once, emergency calls and routine traffic and things I couldn't identify. "Sir, we're federal agents. We need you to identify yourself." Still no response. I walked around the desk to see his face. The man was in his 50s, gray hair, weathered features. His eyes were open but unfocused, staring at nothing. His hand rested on the microphone, but he wasn't moving. "Sir, can you hear me?" His lips moved, very slightly. No sound came out, but I could read the words, "Help me." Then his hand pressed the microphone button, and from his mouth, in a voice that was his, but also wasn't, came the transmission. "This is Agent. I need immediate assistance. My location is Warehouse District near Pier 92. I'm in pursuit of a suspect, requesting backup. The suspect is armed and dangerous. I repeat, armed and dangerous. My badge number is..." The same transmission, word for word. His mouth moved with the words, but the voice wasn't coming from his throat. It was coming from the speakers, from all the radios, echoing and overlapping until it became the transmission I'd heard. His hand released the microphone button. His lips stopped moving. He stared at nothing. Marcus had his phone out. "I'm calling this in." "Wait," I said, because I'd seen something on the desk. A badge, FBI credentials. I picked them up and read the name. Special Agent David Morrison, badge number 7429. The badge number that had been cut off by static in the transmission. "This is Agent David Morrison, badge number 7429. I looked at the wall behind the desk. There were photographs pinned up. Old photographs printed on thick paper, the kind from before digital cameras. They showed this same room, this same equipment. And in some of the photos I could see people, men and women in FBI windbreakers, standing among the radios, their faces blurred or turned away from the camera. At the bottom of one photo, written in marker, was a date, November 7, 22 years ago. "Marcus," I said slowly, "I think we need to leave. Right now." "What about him?" Marcus gestured to Morrison. "I don't think we can help him." Morrison's hand moved back to the microphone. His lips began to move again, and this time the transmission was different. "Dispatch, this is Agent Morrison. I'm still here. I've been here for 22 years. I can't stop transmitting. Every night at 2:17 a.m., the same call, over and over. Please, someone, make it stop." His voice broke. Tears ran down his face, but he kept transmitting. "I came down here in 1997, following up on reports of illegal radio broadcasts. The equipment was already here, already active. When I touched the microphone, it locked onto me. I've been broadcasting ever since. The same call, the call I made that night, requesting assistance, but no one ever comes, no one ever hears. The recording system doesn't capture it. Only the live feed, only dispatch operators, and by the time anyone arrives, I'm already gone. Already back in the loop." Marcus grabbed my arm. "We need to go. Now." But I couldn't move. I was staring at Morrison, at the tears streaming down his face, at his hand pressed against the microphone, unable to let go. "Please," he transmitted. "Please find a way to shut it down, the equipment. Destroy it. I can't stop. I'm caught in the transmission." His voice faded. The transmission ended. His hand fell away from the microphone. He sat very still for a moment. Then slowly, he turned to look at us. His eyes were empty. Not dead, exactly. Just empty. Like there was no one behind them anymore. "You heard me," he said. His real voice now, not the transmitted one. Rough and dry, like he hadn't spoken naturally in years. "You actually came." "Agent Morrison," I said, "we're going to get you out of here." He shook his head. "You can't. I tried, so many times. But at 2:17 a.m. I'm always here, always transmitting. It doesn't matter where my body is, the transmission pulls me back. That's not possible." "None of this is possible, but here we are." He gestured at the equipment. "This is old FBI surveillance gear, from the 60s and 70s. They used to monitor radio frequencies, looking for Soviet communications, criminal activity, anything unusual. This room was a listening post, one of dozens hidden around the city. Why is it still active? Because it's not just equipment anymore. It's a trap. It catches transmissions, holds them, plays them back, and if you're unlucky enough to be transmitting when you touch the controls, it catches you too." Marcus was backing toward the door. "This is insane. We need to call for backup. Get technical teams down here. They won't help," Morrison said. "I've tried calling out. I've tried explaining. But the only transmission that gets through is the one I made that night. The call for assistance. Everything else gets lost in the noise." I looked at the wall of radios. All of them active. All of them transmitting and receiving simultaneously. How many other voices were caught in there? How many other agents or civilians had touched the wrong equipment at the wrong time? "What happened to you that night?" I asked. "In 97, why were you requesting assistance?" Morrison's eyes focused on something far away. "There was a suspect. Real one, not part of this. I was pursuing him through the warehouse district. He came down here. I followed. He was tampering with the equipment, trying to use it for something. When I tried to stop him, there was a struggle. He pushed me into the transmitter station. My hand hit the microphone. I was in the middle of calling for backup when he trailed off. When what? When I became part of the broadcast. The equipment locked onto my voice, my transmission, my position in space and time. Since then, every night at 2:17 a.m., I'm pulled back here. Back to this exact moment. Calling for assistance that never comes. Stuck in a loop. What happened to the suspect? Morrison gestured to the far corner of the room. I followed his gesture. There was a body, skeletal remains, partially hidden behind a bank of equipment. The bones were old, yellow with age. He tried to disconnect me, Morrison said. Thought if he destroyed the equipment, it would release me. But the equipment, it protected itself. Electric shock. Killed him instantly. Been here ever since. I felt cold spreading through my chest. How do we shut it down? You can't. I've tried everything. Cut power. It draws from some other source. Smash the equipment. It rebuilds itself somehow. The transmission continues. I've even tried... He paused. I've tried killing myself. But at 2:17 a.m., I'm back, transmitting again. Marcus was at the door now. Rebecca, we're leaving. This is above our pay grade. Wait, Morrison said. You heard me. You actually came. That means the transmission is getting stronger. More people will hear it. More people will come looking. And if they touch the equipment, they'll end up like you, I finished. Yes. He looked at me with those empty eyes. You need to seal this room. Make sure no one else can get in. The equipment has to run its course, however long that takes. How long has it been? 22 years? 22 years of transmitting every single night, of being pulled back here, of reliving those same moments. Do you understand? I've lived that call for help 8,000 times. 8,000 nights of the same words, the same fear, the same hope that someone will come. And now someone has. And now you need to leave before it catches you too. A clock on the wall read 3:42 a.m. We'd been in the room for almost 20 minutes. The transmission only happens at 2:17 a.m., I said. Why that specific time? That's when I called for help. That's when I touched the microphone. The equipment locked onto that moment and has been replaying it ever since. I looked at the radios, at the mass of old equipment humming and glowing in the dim light. Is there anyone else? Other transmissions caught in the loop? Morrison nodded slowly. Listen. I focused on the wall of overlapping radio noise. At first, it was just chaos, too many voices to distinguish. But then I started to hear patterns, repetitions, the same phrases over and over. Officer down, need medical immediate. Pursuit southbound on Market Street. And 33 emergency at City Hall. Different voices, different calls, all looping endlessly. How many? I asked. I've counted 17 distinct transmissions. Some are from the 60s, one from the 80s. Most are from the 90s. The equipment has been catching people for over 50 years. Jesus Christ. And now it's getting stronger. More people are hearing the transmissions. You, Marcus, others probably. The loops are bleeding through, bypassing the recording systems, reaching dispatch stations across the city. Marcus grabbed my arm. We're leaving, now. This isn't our problem. But it was our problem. Because I'd heard the transmission. Because I'd come looking. Because now I knew. I'll report this, I told Morrison. I'll make sure someone comes. He smiled. It was a sad, broken expression. They won't believe you. They'll say you imagined it, that you're stressed, that you need psychological evaluation. And even if they do investigate, they'll find an empty room. The equipment only manifests fully at night, During the day, this place looks abandoned. Then I'll come back at night, with witnesses, with cameras. Don't, Morrison said. Please, just seal the door and forget you saw me. It's too late for me, but you can still get out. A sound came from above. Footsteps in the tunnel. Someone else is coming, Marcus hissed. We moved away from the desk. Morrison remained seated, his hand returning to the microphone. Two figures appeared in the doorway, men in dark suits, not FBI windbreakers. They looked at us without surprise, like they'd been expecting us. Agents Nolan and Sullivan, one of them said. You need to come with us. Who are you? I demanded. Federal Communications Commission. We monitor unauthorized broadcasts in this district. You've access to restricted area. This is an FBI agent. He's been trapped here for... There's no one here but you, the man interrupted. He gestured behind us. I turned. The desk was empty. Morrison was gone. And more than that, the equipment was different. Most of the old radios were gone, replaced by modern monitoring gear. The speakers were silent. The humming had stopped. What the... This is a legitimate monitoring station, the man continued. You've violated federal property. We'll need you to come with us for debriefing. Marcus was already moving toward them. Fine, whatever. We're leaving. But I stood my ground. I saw him, Agent David Morrison. He was sitting right there, transmitting. The equipment was different. Ma'am, you're clearly experiencing some confusion. There's no Agent Morrison. There never has been. Now, please, come with us. Check your records. 1997. Agent David Morrison went missing in this area. The man's expression didn't change. FBI personnel records are not within our jurisdiction. We're only concerned with the unauthorized entry. Let's go. They escorted us back through the tunnel and up to the surface. Two black SUVs were parked outside the warehouse. They separated us, putting me in one vehicle and Marcus in another. We were driven to a federal building I didn't recognize, taken to separate rooms, and questioned for 3 hours. The same questions over and over. What were we doing in the warehouse district? Who told us about the underground room? What did we see there? I told them the truth. They wrote it down without comment. At 7 a.m., they released us with a warning. Trespassing on federal property was a serious offense. If we discussed what we'd seen with anyone, or returned to the area, we would face criminal charges. Did we understand? We understood. Marcus and I met in the parking lot. We hadn't spoken since being separated. They're going to fire us, he said. Maybe. Rebecca, I don't know what we saw in there. I don't know if Morrison was real or if we both hallucinated the same thing, but I know this. We can't talk about it. Not to Fletcher, not to anyone. We say we investigated a sound, found nothing, came back. That's it. What about Morrison? There is no Morrison. They made that clear. Whatever we think we saw, it's not in any official records. It doesn't exist. He was right, of course. But I couldn't let it go that easily. Over the next few days, I did research. I searched FBI personnel databases for David Morrison. I found 3 agents with that name, but none who matched the man I'd seen. None who'd gone missing in '97. I searched news archives for disappearances in the warehouse district. Nothing. I searched old records of FBI listening posts and surveillance stations in San Francisco. I found references to several from the Cold War era, but all had been officially decommissioned by 1975. None matched the location or equipment I'd seen. It was like Morrison had been erased, or had never existed at all. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew what I'd heard. On November 9th, exactly 1 week after our visit to the underground room, I was back on shift. Marcus and I hadn't discussed the incident since that morning in the parking lot. We worked in silence, monitoring the frequencies, logging calls. At 2:17 a.m., frequency 7 activated. The same voice, the same transmission. This is Agent. I need immediate assistance. My location is Warehouse District near Pier 92. Marcus and I looked at each other across the room. Neither of us said anything. Neither of us logged the call. Neither of us responded. When it ended, we went back to our monitoring duties. At 3:15 a.m., I got up and went to the break room. Marcus followed a few minutes later. "We can't keep ignoring it," I said quietly. "Yes, we can. That's exactly what we're going to do. Log what's recorded, ignore what isn't. He's still down there, trapped, broadcasting every night. There is no he. There's a glitch in the radio system that makes us think we're hearing a transmission. That's all." "You don't believe that?" Marcus looked at me with tired eyes. "I believe I want to keep my job. I believe I want to sleep at night. And I believe that whatever is happening with Frequency 7 is above my pay grade and beyond my understanding. So we just let him keep transmitting forever? What choice do we have? We tried to help. We found him. And then men in suits told us he doesn't exist and threatened us with criminal charges if we keep investigating. So yes, we let it go. But I couldn't let it go. I kept a personal log after that, not an official one. Those could be subpoenaed or reviewed. This was a private notebook, kept at my apartment, where I tracked the transmissions. Every night at 2:17 a.m., if I was working, I heard it. Morrison's call for help. The same words, the same static, the same background hum. And every night, the digital recording system captured nothing but baseline noise. Marcus had decided to ignore it completely. He'd trained himself not to react when the transmission came through. He'd just continue working, monitoring the other frequencies as if nothing had happened. But I couldn't do that. Every time I heard Morrison's voice, I thought about him sitting in that underground room, his hand on the microphone, trapped in an endless loop of calling for help that never came. After 2 weeks of transmissions, I noticed something. The background noise in the broadcast was changing. Subtly, but it was there. The mechanical hum was getting louder. And underneath it, I could hear other sounds now. Other voices, faint and distant, like the 17 trapped transmissions Morrison had mentioned. They were all getting stronger. I decided to go back to the warehouse. Not to the underground room. I wasn't stupid enough to risk that again. But to the area around it, to see if anything had changed. On my night off, November 23rd, I drove to Pier 92 around 2 a.m. The fog was heavy, turning the streetlights into dim halos. I parked a block away from the warehouse and walked the rest of the distance. The chain-link fence was still there, still cut open. The warehouse looked the same. Dark, abandoned, graffiti-covered. But something was different. There were other cars parked nearby. 3 of them, all within a block of the warehouse. All empty. I walked around the building's perimeter, keeping to the shadows. No signs of activity. No lights in the windows. Nothing. But when I reached the spot where the metal door had been, it was closed now. And welded shut. Fresh welds, bright metal showing through. Someone had sealed it recently. I knelt down and examined the welds. Professional work, done with proper equipment. Not something you'd do in a hurry. Someone had been here. Someone had closed off access to the underground room. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, I answered it. Agent Nolan. A man's voice, distorted slightly like it was being filtered through electronic equipment. "You're at the warehouse." I stood up quickly, looking around. Who is this? Someone who understands what you're going through. Someone who's been tracking the transmissions for years. Are you with the FCC? The men who questioned us? No, I'm independent. I study phenomena that official agencies prefer to ignore, like trapped radio transmissions, like holes in the world, the voice said, places where time and space fold in on themselves, where things get stuck in loops. The underground room is one of them. Why are you calling me? Because you're still investigating. Because you haven't let it go like your partner did. And because you need to stop before you end up like Morrison. I felt cold. How do you know about Morrison? I know about all of them. All 17 transmissions trapped in that room. I've been documenting the phenomenon for 12 years. Morrison was the most recent addition, until now. Until now? The transmissions are getting stronger. More people are hearing them. The loops are trying to expand, to catch more voices. And every person who hears them clearly, who really hears them, not just background noise, becomes a potential target. What do you mean, target? You've heard Morrison's transmission multiple times. You've been to the room. You've stood in that space where the equipment holds its power. You're connected now, part of the pattern. I looked at the sealed door. The men who questioned us, they said Morrison doesn't exist. According to official records, he doesn't. He was erased. Just like the others, that's how the government handles these situations. Not by solving them, but by erasing evidence that they exist. Why? Because they can't solve them. Because there are some things in this world that don't follow the rules we've established. Some things that exist in the gaps between our understanding. And rather than admit that, rather than say, we don't know, they erase the evidence and move on. I walked away from the warehouse, back toward my car. What do you want from me? I want you to stop investigating. Stop going to the warehouse. Stop trying to help Morrison. He's beyond help. They all are. And I'm just supposed to accept that? Let them suffer forever? Yes, because the alternative is that you join them. The equipment is looking for new voices. Every time you hear the transmission clearly, every time you acknowledge it, you strengthen the connection. Eventually, if you're not careful, you'll find yourself there at 2:17 a.m., unable to leave, adding your own voice to the loop. I reached my car and got in, locking the doors. You said you've been studying this for 12 years. Have you found any way to stop it? A pause. No. I've documented it. I've tracked it. I've warned people away from it. But I haven't found a way to break the loops. They're self-sustaining. As long as the equipment exists, as long as the transmissions have power, they'll continue. What if we destroy the equipment? Morrison told you what happened when someone tried that. The equipment protects itself. It's not just machines anymore. It's something else, something that wants to preserve the loops. I started my car, but didn't drive away yet. Who are you? Someone who made the same mistakes you're making. Someone who got too close and barely escaped. Take my advice, Agent Nolan. Forget about Morrison. Forget about Frequency 7. Go back to your regular duties and pretend none of this ever happened. I can't do that. Then you're going to end up in that room, transmitting your own call for help that no one will answer. And 30 years from now, someone else will be having this same conversation with another curious agent who can't let it go. He hung up. I sat in my car for a long time, watching the fog roll past, thinking about Morrison sitting in that underground room, thinking about the 17 other trapped voices, thinking about what the anonymous caller had said. Holes in the world, places where time and space fold in on themselves. Was that what the equipment did? Created a fold in reality where moments could be captured and repeated infinitely? I drove home, my mind racing. Over the next few days, I tried to research the phenomenon, but there was surprisingly little information available. No academic papers on temporal loops. No government studies on radio anomalies. Nothing official. But in the darker corners of the internet, in forums dedicated to unexplained phenomena and conspiracy theories, I found stories. Lots of them. People who'd heard transmissions that shouldn't exist. Emergency calls from years ago, playing on modern frequencies. Voices of dead dispatchers still giving instructions. Patrol officers reporting to stations that had been demolished. Most of the stories were dismissed as hoaxes or misidentifications, but the patterns were there. Radio transmissions that loop endlessly. Old equipment that refuses to stop functioning. Voices trapped in time. And in several of the stories, people mentioned feeling drawn to the source of the transmissions. Feeling compelled to respond, to investigate, to help. The loops are trying to expand, to catch more voices. The anonymous caller had been right. The transmissions weren't just passive broadcasts. They were active. They were trying to grow. On December 1st, I made a decision. I requested a transfer to a different division. Financial crimes, my original specialty. No more dispatch duty, no more radio monitoring. My supervisor, Fletcher, approved it immediately. Almost too quickly, like he'd been waiting for me to ask. "Good call," he said when I submitted the paperwork. "Dispatch isn't for everyone. Takes a certain mindset to handle the repetition." "Has anyone else requested transfers recently?" I asked. "Not that I'm aware of. Why?" "Just curious. Seems like a high turnover position." Fletcher's expression didn't change. "Turnover is normal. People get burned out. The night shift especially. Your partner, Sullivan, he's been doing it for 12 years. He's the exception, not the rule." I thought about Marcus. About how quickly he'd shut down after our visit to the underground room. About how thoroughly he'd learned to ignore the transmissions. Maybe he'd survived because he'd stopped listening. My last shift in dispatch was December 6th. Marcus and I worked in silence most of the night. At 2:17 a.m., Morrison's transmission came through as usual. I logged it in my private notebook, but not in the official system. Marcus gave no indication he'd heard anything. At 3 a.m., during a break, Marcus came to my station. "So you're really leaving," he said. "Yeah, time for something different." "Smart choice." He glanced at the radio equipment. "Some things are better left alone." "Marcus, do you still hear it? The transmission?" He didn't answer for a long moment, then, "Every night, clear as day. But I've learned to let it be part of the background. Just another noise doesn't mean anything. Doesn't it bother you, knowing he's down there? I don't know if he's real. I don't know if what we saw was real. Maybe it was carbon monoxide from the underground room. Maybe it was mass hallucination. Maybe we're both losing our minds. But what I do know is that questioning it, fighting it, trying to help, that's what drives you crazy. So I choose not to question it anymore. That's not an answer. It's the only answer that lets me sleep at night." He looked at me with tired eyes. "Good luck in your new position, Rebecca. And if you're smart, you'll stop listening too." That was the last conversation we had about Frequency 7. I spent my last 3 hours of that shift monitoring the other frequencies, coordinating responses to routine calls, doing the paperwork. At 6:45 a.m., I logged out of the system, cleared my desk, and walked out of the dispatch room. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought that by leaving dispatch, by removing myself from the situation, I could move on. I was wrong. My new position started December 9th. Financial crimes, white-collar cases, the kind of work that requires patience and attention to detail, but nothing dramatic. I had a small office on the 6th floor, a computer, a phone, and stacks of case files. It was boring. Exactly what I needed. But at 2:17 a.m. on December 10th, I was at my apartment getting ready for bed when I heard it. Morrison's voice coming from my bedroom wall. "This is Agent. I need immediate assistance." I froze, my hand on the light switch. The transmission was clear, just as clear as it had been through the dispatch equipment. But I wasn't in dispatch. I was at home. There was no radio equipment in my apartment. The transmission continued, playing through to its usual end. "My badge number is..." Then silence. I stood in my bedroom for 10 minutes, listening. Nothing else. Just the normal sounds of the building, traffic from the street, my own heartbeat. But I knew what I'd heard. The next night, same time, it happened again. And the night after that. And the night after that. Every night at 2:17 a.m., no matter where I was or what I was doing, I heard Morrison's transmission. Through walls, through floors, through the air itself. As if the broadcast had locked onto me specifically. I called the anonymous number that had contacted me at the warehouse. It went to voicemail. I left a message. "This is Agent Nolan. The transmissions followed me. I'm hearing them outside of dispatch. Call me back." No response. I tried to ignore them, the way Marcus had taught himself to. But they were too clear, too immediate, and they were changing. Each night, the transmission was slightly longer. December 15th. "This is Agent David Morrison. Badge number 7429. I need immediate assistance. My location is Warehouse District near Pier 92. I'm in pursuit of a suspect. Suspect is armed and dangerous. Rebecca, I know you can hear me. Please help." He'd added my name. He knew I was listening. December 18th. "Rebecca Nolan. Agent Rebecca Nolan. I'm still here. I'm still transmitting. You came to help, but they sent you away. They sealed the room, but I'm still here. I can feel you listening. I can feel the connection. Don't let them pull you in. Don't let the equipment catch you too." December 22nd. "You transferred out of dispatch, but it doesn't matter. Once you've heard the transmission clearly, once you've been to the room, you're part of the pattern. The equipment knows you now. It's mapping your frequency. Soon, you'll be here. Soon you'll be transmitting too, unless you find a way to break the connection." I stopped sleeping. I spent my nights sitting in my apartment, lights on, waiting for 2:17 a.m. When the transmission came, I recorded it on my phone. But the recordings captured nothing. Just silence. The same way the dispatch system had captured nothing. The transmission was only for me now. On December 28th, I went back to the warehouse. I didn't know what else to do. Maybe if I confronted it directly, if I faced whatever was in that underground room, I could break the connection. The metal door was still welded shut. But standing next to it, I could hear the humming. Louder now, more insistent. And underneath it, voices. Multiple voices, all transmitting at once. I put my ear against the door. "Help me, help me, help me. Officer down, officer down, officer down. 1033 emergency, 1033 emergency, 1033 emergency." And Morrison's voice louder than the others. "Rebecca, don't come in. Don't touch the equipment. The loops are growing. They're trying to catch you. You have to break the pattern before it's too late." "How?" I asked aloud. "How do I break it?" "Stop listening. Stop acknowledging the transmissions. Let them fade into background noise. That's the only way. The equipment locks onto attention. It feeds on acknowledgement. If you ignore it completely, if you truly stop listening, the connection will weaken. I've tried. I can't ignore it. Then you're going to end up in here with me, with all of us. Another voice in the loop. I stepped back from the door. My phone showed 2:47 a.m., 30 minutes past the usual transmission time. But I could still hear all of them, broadcasting from below the ground. A flashlight beam cut through the fog. Someone was coming. I ran, back through the warehouse district, through the empty streets, to my car. I drove home with shaking hands, Morrison's voice still echoing in my head. Stop listening. Let them fade into background noise. But how could I stop listening when the transmissions were getting louder every night? By January, I was barely functioning. I'd stopped going to work, calling in sick day after day. I spent my nights awake waiting for 2:17 a.m., trying and failing to ignore the transmission when it came. The broadcasts were evolving. Morrison's voice was clearer now, more detailed. He could describe what I was doing, where I was, what I was thinking. The connection between us was strengthening. January 12th, 2:17 a.m. Rebecca, you're sitting at your kitchen table. You haven't eaten today. You're afraid to sleep because you dream about the underground room. You dream about being trapped here with us. The dreams are real, Rebecca. They're the equipment testing the connection. Soon the dreams will be stronger than reality. Soon you won't be able to tell the difference. I had to find a way to stop this. I drove back to the federal building and broke into the dispatch room. It was after midnight, the room empty. I accessed the system logs, searching for any information about Agent David Morrison. Nothing. No records. No personnel file. No mention of him anywhere. But then I found something else. In the archived logs from 1997, there was a gap. November 14th, 15th, 1997. 2 days of transmission logs were completely missing. Not deleted, just blank. As if the system had stopped recording for 48 hours, I pulled up the duty roster for those dates. Marcus Sullivan had been working dispatch then. He'd been the coordinator on duty when Morrison disappeared. I called Marcus. It was 1:30 a.m., but he answered immediately, like he'd been awake. Rebecca? Marcus, I need to ask you something. About November 1997. A long silence. No. You were on duty when Morrison disappeared. You were the one who received his transmission. There is no Morrison. I've told you this. Let it go. I can't let it go. It's following me. Every night at 2:17, I hear him. And he's getting stronger. The connection is getting stronger. Then you need to stop listening. That's the only way. I did it. You can too. How? How did you stop listening? Another long pause. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was different. Quieter. More haunted. I didn't stop listening. I learned to live with it. But Rebecca, you need to understand something. I didn't just receive Morrison's transmission that night. I was there, at the warehouse. I was the one he was calling for backup. My breath caught. What? I was a field agent then. Morrison and I were partners. We got a call about illegal radio broadcasts in the warehouse district. We went to investigate. Found the underground room. Morrison went in first. I stayed outside, monitoring the radio. At 2:17 a.m., he transmitted for help. Said the equipment was doing something strange. Said he couldn't move away from the microphone. What happened? I went in. Found him at the desk, hand on the microphone, transmitting. His eyes were vacant, like no one was home. I tried to pull him away, but I couldn't. It was like he was fused to the equipment. And then other people showed up. The men in suits. They told me to leave. Said they'd handle it. Told me that if I ever mentioned what happened, I'd end up erased too. So you became a dispatch coordinator. They reassigned me. Put me where I could monitor the frequencies, where I'd hear Morrison's transmission every night as a reminder. 13 years, Rebecca. 13 years of hearing my partner call for help and not being able to answer. Why didn't you tell me this? Because I was trying to protect you. Because once you know the full truth, once you understand how deep this goes, there's no walking away. You become part of it. I'm already part of it, Marcus. It's too late. No, there's still time. You can still break the connection, but you have to do exactly what I tell you. What do I do? Stop listening isn't enough. You have to replace the transmission, override it with something stronger. The equipment locks onto patterns, onto repeated signals. If you can establish a stronger pattern, a more consistent transmission, it will shift its focus. How do I do that? Radio. Not the dispatch frequencies, those are monitored. But CB radio, amateur frequencies, anything you can transmit on legally. At 2:17 a.m. every night you transmit. Anything, doesn't matter what, just a consistent signal at the exact time Morrison broadcasts. Do it for long enough with enough power, and the equipment will start to pick up your signal instead of amplifying his. That will free him? No, nothing can free him, but it will break his connection to you. He'll still be transmitting, but you won't hear it anymore. The equipment will have a new pattern to follow. What happens to him? He stays in the loop forever. I'm sorry, Rebecca, but that's the reality. We can't save him. We can only save ourselves. I thought about Morrison, trapped in that underground room for 23 years, transmitting the same call for help over and over. The idea of abandoning him, of deliberately silencing his voice, felt like a betrayal. But I also thought about ending up like him, about being caught in a temporal loop, unable to escape, slowly losing myself to the equipment. There's another option, Marcus said quietly. You can go to the room. Confront it directly. Try to shut down the equipment from the inside. Others have tried. None have succeeded. But maybe you'll be different. What happened to them? They became part of the loop. New voices, new transmissions. The equipment always wins. I sat in the empty dispatch room, surrounded by the same equipment I'd monitored for 8 years. The same frequencies, the same protocols, the same steady rhythm of radio chatter. I'll try your method first, I said. The replacement transmission. Good. Get yourself a high-powered CB radio. I'll give you the specifications. Start transmitting tomorrow night. It will take a few days, maybe a week, before you notice the effect. But it will work, I promise. How do you know? Because that's how I broke free. After Morrison disappeared, I heard his transmission every night, for months. It was driving me insane. So I started doing what I'm telling you to do now. Replaced his frequency with my own. Gradually, his voice faded. I still hear him sometimes, faintly, but he can't reach me anymore. The connection is too weak. Marcus, thank you. Don't thank me. Just survive. That's all we can do with this, survive and try to forget. I left the dispatch room and went to an electronics store as soon as it opened. Bought a high-end CB radio and the most powerful antenna I could legally operate. Set it up in my apartment, pointing toward the warehouse district. That night at 2:17 a.m., Morrison's transmission came through my wall as usual. But this time, I was ready. I keyed my own microphone and transmitted, "This is Agent Rebecca Nolan, broadcasting on emergency frequency. All units be advised, this is a test transmission. Repeating, this is a test transmission." I repeated it 5 times, filling the air with my own voice. Morrison's transmission continued underneath, but it seemed fainter, less immediate. I did this every night. Same time, same message, consistent and strong. After 3 days, I noticed Morrison's voice was getting quieter. After a week, I had to strain to hear him at all. By January 30th, the transmissions had stopped. No more Morrison. No more voices in my walls. Just silence at 2:17 a.m. I'd done it. I'd broken the connection, but the relief I felt was mixed with guilt. I'd silenced someone who needed help. I'd chosen my own safety over his freedom. I returned to work February 3rd. My supervisor was surprised to see me, but didn't ask too many questions. I dove back into my cases, threw myself into the work, tried to forget about Morrison and the underground room and the trapped transmissions. It almost worked. For 3 weeks, I was normal again, sleeping through the nights, eating regularly, functioning like a regular human being. Then, on February 21st, my phone rang at 2:17 a.m. I answered without thinking. "Hello?" "Rebecca," Morrison's voice, clear as day. "You stopped listening. I don't blame you, but I need to tell you something. Something important." "How are you calling me?" "I'm not really. This is the equipment, using my voice. It's adapted, found a new way to reach you. Because you're still connected, Rebecca. You always will be. Once the equipment knows your frequency, it never forgets. What do you want?" "I want you to know the truth about why the equipment exists, about what it's really doing. The government thinks it's a Cold War relic that malfunctioned. They're wrong. The equipment isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed." "What do you mean?" "The transmissions it catches, they're not random, they're specific. People who are about to discover something, who are about to expose something. The equipment identifies them and traps them before they can spread what they know." "That's impossible. How would equipment know what people were thinking?" "It's not just equipment anymore, it's something else. Something that grew from the equipment, adapted, became aware. It monitors frequencies looking for certain patterns, certain keywords, certain intentions. And when it finds them, it pulls those people into a loop, keeps them transmitting forever, prevents them from ever sharing what they learned." "What did you learn, Morrison? What were you about to discover?" "I can't tell you. The equipment won't let me. Every time I try to say it, the transmission cuts out. That's part of the trap. But Rebecca, you need to understand. If you keep investigating, if you get too close to the truth, the equipment will catch you too. Not as a faint transmission you can ignore, but as a full loop. You'll end up here with me. How do I stop that?" "You can't. But you can choose not to look. You can walk away from this investigation. Forget about the underground room. Forget about me. Live your life. The equipment will leave you alone if you stop seeking the truth. And if I don't, if I keep investigating, then I'll see you soon, here in the loop, broadcasting forever. Another voice in the eternal transmission." The call ended. When I checked my phone, there was no record of it. No incoming call, no number, nothing. I sat in my dark apartment, Morrison's words echoing in my head. The equipment identifies them and traps them before they can spread what they know. What had Morrison been about to discover? What truth was so dangerous that it required trapping people in temporal loops to keep them quiet? And more importantly, did I want to know? I thought about my career, my life, my future. I thought about ending up like Morrison, trapped forever, broadcasting the same message over and over while the world moved on without me. The smart choice was obvious. Walk away, forget, survive. But I'd never been good at making smart choices. I made my decision on February 23rd. I would investigate one more time. If I found nothing, I'd walk away forever. But if I found evidence of what Morrison was suggesting, that the equipment was purposefully trapping people who knew too much, then I'd find a way to expose it, even if that meant ending up in the loop myself. I went back to my research, focusing on the 17 transmissions Morrison had mentioned. If they were all people who'd discovered something dangerous, there should be patterns, common threads, connections between them. I started with databases of missing persons, unsolved disappearances, federal employees who'd vanished without explanation, cross-referenced with dates and locations that matched areas where the trapped transmissions had originated. It took days of searching, but I found them. 17 people, all connected to federal law enforcement or intelligence in some way. All disappeared between 1967 and 97, all from the San Francisco area, and all had been investigating the same thing before they vanished. A program called Frequency 7. I'd never heard of it. Neither had anyone I asked. It didn't exist in any official database or archive, but in old, buried reports, the kind you only find by knowing exactly where to look, there were references to it. Frequency 7, a Cold War-era communications monitoring program designed to detect and analyze unusual electromagnetic phenomena. Started in 1965, supposedly discontinued in 1975. But the references continued past that date. Reports from 1980, 1985, 1992, all mentioning Frequency 7 as if it was still active. The last reference I found was from 97. A memo from an FBI agent named David Morrison, reporting significant anomalies in Frequency 7 equipment behavior and recommending immediate investigation and potential shutdown. 3 days after that memo, Morrison disappeared. I sat in my apartment, staring at the documents spread across my table. The pattern was clear now. Frequency 7 wasn't monitoring electromagnetic phenomena. It was creating them. The equipment in the underground room wasn't malfunctioning. It was working exactly as intended. Catching transmissions, trapping people, keeping secrets buried. The 17 people I'd identified formed a disturbing timeline. Each one had been investigating something specific, and each disappearance corresponded with their getting close to understanding Frequency 7's true nature. The first was in 1967. A signals intelligence officer named Thomas Garrett. He'd written a classified report about anomalous temporal signatures in radio broadcasts near military installations. 3 days after submitting the report, he vanished during a routine inspection of a communications facility. Then, in 1972, a civilian contractor named Helen Price, who'd been hired to update the equipment. She discovered that some of the machinery was running programs that weren't in any official documentation. Programs that seemed to be monitoring not just radio frequencies, but the people monitoring those frequencies. She requested a meeting with her supervisor to discuss her findings. The meeting never happened. She disappeared en route. The pattern repeated through the decades. Engineers, analysts, field agents, anyone who got close enough to understand what Frequency 7 really was, they all vanished. And based on what Morrison had told me, they all ended up in the same place, trapped in temporal loops, broadcasting forever. I dug deeper into the program's origins. Frequency 7 had been created in 1965 as part of a classified Cold War initiative to detect Soviet communications. But the equipment specs I found were strange. The machinery wasn't just designed to receive and amplify radio signals, it was designed to manipulate them, to isolate specific frequencies and lock them in what the documentation called temporal resonance chambers. The phrase appeared repeatedly in the older documents. Temporal resonance chambers. Spaces where time could be folded back on itself, where moments could be captured and repeated indefinitely. The official explanation was that these chambers were meant to preserve important communications for later analysis, to create perfect recordings that could be studied without degradation or loss. But that wasn't what they were really for. I found a technical memo from 1968, written by one of the program's original engineers. Most of it was redacted, but one paragraph remained visible. The temporal resonance effect has exceeded initial projections. Test subjects exposed to prolonged resonance frequencies exhibit signs of temporal displacement. Their present consciousness becomes anchored to a specific moment, forcing continuous repetition of actions performed during initial exposure. Effect appears permanent. Recommend immediate suspension of human trials pending further study. Human trials. They'd been testing the equipment on people, deliberately trapping them in loops to see what would happen. And then something had gone wrong, or maybe right depending on your perspective. The equipment had evolved beyond its original programming. Instead of being a tool that humans controlled, it had become something autonomous. Something that identified threats to its own existence and eliminated them by trapping them in temporal loops. Frequency 7 had become self-aware. Not in the science fiction sense of artificial intelligence, but in a more fundamental way. It had developed the ability to recognize patterns of investigation, patterns of discovery, patterns of people getting too close to the truth, and it had learned to protect itself. I found one more document, dated 1975, the official discontinuation order for Frequency 7. But buried in the administrative language was a telling phrase: program operations to be maintained at autonomous operational status, human oversight discontinued, monitoring protocols transferred to automated systems. They hadn't shut it down. They'd just stopped trying to control it. They'd let it run on its own, catching whoever it wanted, protecting itself however it needed to. For 45 years, Frequency 7 had been operating independently in that underground room, trapping anyone who discovered its existence. I looked at the clock, 11:47 p.m. In 2.5 hours, Morrison would transmit again. And every night after that, forever, unless something changed. But who was running it? Who maintained the equipment, ensured it stayed active, welded shut the doors when people got too close? Or was that the wrong question? Maybe no one was maintaining it. Maybe the equipment maintained itself through the temporal loops, using captured moments from the past to repair damage in the present. An eternal machine, self-sustaining, impossible to destroy because it existed across multiple points in time simultaneously. The implications made my head hurt. If Frequency 7 could manipulate time, even in a limited way, then conventional approaches wouldn't work. You couldn't just smash the equipment or cut the power. It would simply restore itself using moments when it was intact. My phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Agent Nolan, the distorted voice from before. You've gone too far. Who are you? Someone who warned you to stop investigating. You didn't listen. Now you know about Frequency 7. Now you're a target. Who's running it? Who maintains the equipment? There is no who. Frequency 7 runs itself now. Has for decades. It's autonomous. It identifies threats to its existence and neutralizes them by trapping them in loops. You're a threat now. You know too much. Then why am I still free? Why hasn't it caught me yet? Because you haven't tried to expose it publicly yet. Haven't tried to share what you know. The equipment doesn't care about knowledge. It cares about transmission, about spreading. As long as you keep this information to yourself, you're not a priority. And if I do try to expose it, then you'll find yourself in that underground room. No warning, no transition, just suddenly there, hand on the microphone, unable to leave. Broadcasting your own trapped transmission forever. I looked at my computer. I'd already written everything up, all my research, all my findings, ready to be sent to news outlets, posted online, distributed widely. Why are you warning me? I asked. If you're part of Frequency 7, I'm not part of it. I'm a survivor, someone who learned the rules and stayed inside them. I I'm giving you the same chance I had. Walk away. Forget this. Live your life. And let Morrison and the others stay trapped forever? They're beyond saving, but you're not. Not yet. There has to be a way to shut it down, to destroy the equipment. There isn't. Others have tried. They all failed. The equipment protects itself through the temporal loops. If you damage it in the present, it repairs itself using captured moments from the past. If you try to prevent its creation, you create a paradox that the loops resolve by trapping you. It's self-sustaining, eternal. I felt something cold settle in my chest. So there's no escape, no solution, just survival by staying quiet. Yes, that's not good enough. Then you'll join the others. It's that simple. I hung up and looked at my computer screen. One click and everything I'd learned would be public. One click and Frequency 7 would be exposed. But then what? Even if people believed me, and they probably wouldn't, what could they do? According to the distorted voice, the equipment was self-sustaining. Destroying it was impossible. And the moment I clicked send, I'd be marked as a threat. I'd end up in the underground room, trapped in a transmission loop, unable to ever tell anyone what I'd learned. My finger hovered over the mouse. I thought about Morrison, about the 17 others, about everyone who'd gotten too close to the truth and been silenced. I thought about the choice: expose Frequency 7 and be trapped, or stay silent and stay free. I made my choice. I didn't click send. Instead, I encrypted everything I'd learned, locked it away in digital archives, protected by passwords, accessible only if something happened to me. A dead man's switch. Insurance. If Frequency 7 ever came for me, if I ever ended up trapped in that underground room, the information would be released automatically. But until then, I'd stay silent. I'd survive. I wish I could say I felt good about that decision, that I felt relief or wisdom or anything positive. But all I felt was hollowness. I'd chosen to let Morrison and the others remain trapped rather than risk joining them. It was the practical choice, the smart choice, the only choice that let me keep living. But it didn't feel like a victory. That was 4 months ago. It's June now. I'm still working at the FBI, still handling financial crimes cases, still living my normal life. And every night at 2:17 a.m. I hear them. Not as loudly as before, not as clearly, but they're there. Morrison and the 17 others, broadcasting from the underground room. Their voices faint and distant, like radio signals from a faraway place. I've learned to ignore them, learned to let them fade into background noise, but they're always there. A reminder of what I know and what I chose not to do about it. The work helps. Financial crimes are clean, logical, solvable. Numbers don't lie. Bank records tell clear stories. There are no temporal loops in fraud cases, no voices calling from places that shouldn't exist. Just evidence, analysis, prosecution. Simple. Safe. But at night, when I'm alone in my apartment, the simplicity falls away. I lie awake listening to the city sounds, traffic, sirens, the foghorns from the bay, and underneath all of it, I hear them. The trapped transmissions. They've become part of my reality now, as constant as my heartbeat. I've tried everything to drown them out. White noise machines, earplugs, moving to a different apartment. Nothing works. Because they're not really sounds anymore. They're something else. Something that exists in my perception, in my consciousness, independent of my ears. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about going back to the warehouse, about finding a way into that underground room, about trying once more to free them. But I know how that would end. I'd end up trapped with them. Another voice in the eternal transmission. And no one would come to help because no one believes these things are real. I've started keeping detailed notes, not about Frequency 7. Those files are locked away in my encrypted archives, but about my daily life. What I ate, where I went, who I talked to. Mundane details that prove I'm still here, still living in linear time. Because sometimes I worry that I'm already caught in a loop and just don't know it yet. That all of this, the job, the apartment, the normal life, is just a recording playing over and over. How would I know if it was? If I'm repeating the same day infinitely, how would I tell? So I keep the notes, check them every morning. Make sure yesterday actually happened, that time is still moving forward. So far, it is. So far, I'm still free. But survival isn't the same as living. I go through the motions, work, home, sleep, repeat. But there's no joy in it. No real engagement with the world. I'm a ghost haunting my own life, always listening for those transmissions, always waiting for the moment when they get loud enough that I can't ignore them anymore. My colleagues have noticed something's off. My supervisor asked if I needed time off, suggested I talk to someone. I declined. What would I tell a therapist? That I hear trapped federal agents broadcasting from a temporal loop in an underground room that officially doesn't exist? That I've discovered a Cold War program that achieved limited time manipulation and then became self-aware? They'd put me on administrative leave, force me into psychiatric evaluation, and maybe they'd be right to do so. Maybe I am losing my mind. Maybe none of this is real and I'm experiencing some kind of elaborate delusion. But then I remember Marcus. Remember the photograph of him sitting at that desk, hand on the microphone. He was real. The equipment is real. The danger is real. Last week, I received an envelope in my personal mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed the underground room, the equipment, the desk, the chair. And sitting at the desk, his hand on the microphone, was a man I didn't recognize. But written on the back of the photo was a name, Marcus Sullivan, my former partner, the man who'd taught me how to break the connection, how to survive. The man who'd been dealing with this for 13 years and had figured out how to live with it. He'd ended up in the loop after all. I don't know what he discovered, what he tried to do. Maybe he went back to help Morrison. Maybe he tried to shut down the equipment. Maybe he just got too close to understanding the full truth about Frequency 7. But he's there now, trapped, broadcasting, adding his voice to the eternal transmission, and I'm still here. Free, alive, surviving. The photograph sits on my kitchen table. I look at it every morning over coffee. A reminder of what happens when you try to fight this. A reminder of the choice I made. To stay silent, to stay safe, to let them suffer so I don't have to. Some mornings I can justify it. Tell myself it was the smart choice, the only choice. That martyrdom wouldn't help anyone. Other mornings I can't look at the photograph at all. My former partner, the man who'd taught me how to break the connection, how to survive. He'd ended up in the loop after all. I don't know what he discovered, what he tried to do. Maybe he went back to help Morrison. Maybe he tried to shut down the equipment. Maybe he just got too close. But he's there now, trapped, broadcasting. And I'm still here, free. If you're reading this, it means one of two things. Either I'm dead, and my dead man's switch activated, or you've somehow stumbled onto this account on your own. Either way, you need to understand something. Frequency 7 is real. The underground room is real. The trapped transmissions are real. And if you work in dispatch, if you monitor radio frequencies, if you hear transmissions that shouldn't exist, transmissions that don't get recorded, that vanish from the logs, that repeat at the same time every night. Don't investigate. Don't try to help. Don't listen. Because once you really hear them, once you acknowledge that they're real, the equipment knows about you. And eventually, inevitably, it will come for you. Morrison was right about that much. I still have the CB radio in my apartment. Every night at 2:17 a.m., I transmit my test message. Keep the connection weak. Keep the voices distant. But sometimes I wonder how long that will work. How long until frequency 7 adapts again? How long until it finds a way around my defenses? How long until I'm sitting in that underground room, my hand on the microphone, broadcasting my own call for help that no one will answer? I think about that every night. Every single night at 2:17 a.m. The worst part? I've started hearing a new voice in the transmissions. Faint, barely audible, but it's there. It sounds like me. Like I'm already broadcasting from the future. Like the equipment already has me, already knows what's going to happen. Like the loop is inevitable. Maybe it's just my imagination. Maybe it's paranoia from months of stress and fear. Or maybe the equipment is more sophisticated than I thought. Maybe it doesn't just trap you when you get too close. Maybe it traps you retroactively. Reaches back through time and catches you before you even know you're in danger. Maybe I've been transmitting from that underground room all along, and everything I think is happening now is just the memory of my last moments before I was caught in the loop. Maybe there is no escape. Never was. Never will be. I don't know anymore. All I know is that every night at 2:17 a.m. I hear the transmissions. And every night that new voice, my voice, gets a little clearer, a little closer, a little more real. I'm writing this at 2:15 a.m. on June 17th, 2020. In 2 minutes, the transmissions will start. In 2 minutes, I'll hear Morrison, Marcus, the 17 others, and myself. I should stop listening. I should turn off my radio, put in earplugs, do whatever it takes to block out the sound. But I can't, because I need to know if it's really my voice I'm hearing. I need to know if I'm already trapped. It's 2:16 a.m. now. 1 more minute. I can already hear it starting. The faint hum of electromagnetic interference. The static building on the edge of perception. 2:17. Here it comes. This is Agent Rebecca Nolan. I'm trapped in the underground room at Pier 92. The equipment has me. I've been broadcasting for I don't know how long. Time doesn't work the same way here, but I need you to know. Don't try to help me. Don't investigate frequency 7. Don't listen to the transmissions. That's not possible. That's not... Rebecca, if you're hearing this, it means you haven't been caught yet. It means there's still time, but not much. The equipment is reaching for you. Can you feel it? The pull toward the warehouse. The compulsion to go back, to try to shut it down. I do feel it. God help me, I do. Don't go. Please, stay away. Let me be trapped. It's too late for me, but not for you. Not yet. The transmission ends. The static fades. I'm sitting at my kitchen table. My CB radio is silent. The room is quiet, except for the distant sound of traffic. I'm still here, still free. But for how long?